All right. Thank you for being here today. Harvey Wizard, writer of word and song, comedian, enterpriser, other things I'm sure we'll talk about. You are not in the US right now, but in a country that I don't think has hurricanes that often. If it has one since they started recording it, I'm not sure it has, but how are things down
Yeah,
south?
things down south here in Costa Rica are just great. It's true we don't have hurricanes. Sometimes we'll have heavy rains that are caused by hurricanes in the Caribbean or near us or something. But no, we don't have hurricanes. But interestingly, see, the world is such an interesting place. You can always be surprised, right? Because one of Costa Rica's big feathers in its cap is that it works on 100% renewable energy. Okay. The entire energy grid for the country is all based on renewable. And guess what just happened over the last couple of weeks? Due to climate change, there's not been the usual rain for the rainy season. So now they're going to start rationing electricity, basically. Like like on Thursday and Friday from 8 to 1, there won't be any electricity.
Why? So
So
it didn't rain, so there's no electricity?
well, it's because the electricity that's generated in Costa Rica is generated both from the heat from the volcanoes, but also from all the waterfalls from running water, right? The running water pushes the generators, that kind of thing. So if there's not the usual rain, then you don't have the same force of water, and then you haven't generated enough electricity for the country. So so here we were, all like, oh, we're so modern, we're so cool, and now we're like third world rationing. So that was an interesting surprise.
What are
But
the
I
electrical needs of Costa Rica?
not more than, if anything, less probably than other countries, because it's it's a it's a country that's growing in prosperity. I think it's the most literate country in Central or South America, so it is that going for it. But there are certain elements that are kind of third world. There's a lot of people who live in pretty abject poverty. The thing that's great about the Costa Rican government, from my point of view as an American, is they've set it up so really poor people can survive. Meaning, there are no property taxes unless your house is worth more than $250,000, right? So there's nobody who'll get in the situation of paying off their house, getting ready to retire, and now they have to move to Florida, like in the U.S., because the property taxes, if they're living in a place like New York or something, or a suburb of New York, or now they can't afford it. So once you have your house, that's never going to happen. They keep the cost of bus rides incredibly cheap. So if you can't afford to have a car, at least you can get all over the country for a few bucks if you need to. And they regulate prices of staples, and make sure the rice and beans and basic vegetables, stuff like that, is going to be available. But then they tax through the roof the stuff for gringos like me. Like there's a 50% tax on cars, new or whatever, 50%. So the car is going to cost me 50% more than what the same car would cost in the US, purely because that's how they're pulling taxes in. If you want to buy like a Head and Shoulders or something, a name brand shampoo, it could cost you $10 here versus $2 in a Rite Aid. So they've structured those, things, and they're trying to do the right thing. But every so often you get into a situation like this where they try to do the right thing in terms of, making the country energy independent, but they didn't think maybe we should have a backup of some
Yeah, I
kind
wonder
in case
how
it doesn't in
energy
case it does
independent
rain.
is it if half the people don't use electricity and then the other half don't get to use electricity when the government says we're not using electricity? Maybe the
Well,
idea of taxes and um, electricity that's more reliable makes a country not a third world country.
but the truth is that, and this isn't that different from things that are happening in the US. It's sort of unanticipated climate change as opposed to, or the unanticipated effects of climate change as opposed to just overall bad planning. I think the idea is that when we have normal rains, there's more than enough electricity, far more than enough, and then if people begin um, if people begin elevating their lifestyle so that more and more people need electricity, they would be able to accommodate that. I think they just got caught off guard because they thought they were fine because they were relying on existing weather patterns, and that's not that different from all the people who've suffered in all the ways they have in the U.S. Right? Hawaii, part of Hawaii that kind of just burned down, and then people, then the floods and all those other things, which are basically they bought these things, they thought they were good, the insurance companies thought everything was good, and then everything went counter to what everybody's expectations were, and then people start suffering. So, I mean, go ahead.
It reminds me of a restaurant I went into once. It sounds like the people that run this restaurant are also running Costa Rica.
Probably.
I went into a restaurant. There were maybe, let's say, just for round numbers, there were 50 tables, and there were 15 tables with people at them. And we got there and we're like, we'd like a table for two. And they said, it's going to be a few minutes because we're unexpectedly busy.
Right.
All right. So the plan was, let's make a restaurant that seats 50 tables. And when we have 15 people or 15 tables set, we're unexpectedly busy. So we weren't expecting to have 15 tables set, but we bought 50. And now it's going to take a little time for you to get seated because we can't deal with what we thought we would deal with. See, it doesn't make any sense.
No, yes,
It doesn't make sense.
Yes, but the having owned a restaurant that failed here in Costa Rica.
Okay. All right.
So
Sounds
I learned
like
about the restaurant business. No. It's interesting. But I tell you why my restaurant failed, which is really me not doing enough investigation. But the thing I was going to say about the restaurant, as soon as you told me that scenario, that they had more than enough tables, your biggest costs in a restaurant, that generally the things that will drive you out of business if you don't have capital for them, are actually your rent and your labor cost. So I think it's as simple as, for that particular day, they just didn't have enough people on staff because they were basing their staffing on their anticipated lower turnout. So even though they had the capacity, the idea is, okay, we have the capacity for Saturday nights, whatever, that's when we staff up big. This particular night, we're not expecting so many people. It was just a staffing issue. That's what I think. So it wasn't.
It sounds like the same people
but it's
that would say we are climate, we're energy independent. We've got it all set. We're 100% renewable, and you're not going to have electricity. It's the same mindset.
Well,
I understand what you're saying about staffing.
Yeah.
Sense, but.
Right. But then again, there's that other part of living here in Costa Rica, which is that it's always had the whiff of third world to it, right? Like especially in terms of bureaucratic stuff,
it's a soft communism. When you start saying we're going to set the prices for beans and rice, the government's deciding those prices. Okay. Except for these other people that come in and have money, y'all are going to pay more for cars and things like that. There won't be any roads to drive them on, and there's no electricity and there's no gas because we run everything on waterfalls.
Actually, I mean, the roads are somewhat problematic, but again, see, you have to look at the totality of the situation, which is, I bought my house for $90,000. I don't have to pay property taxes. I get the state health insurance in case I got hit by a truck that costs $100 a month for my wife and me. But meanwhile, for everyday things, even like a colonoscopy, it's $300 to the best guy in the country, because doctors don't make what doctors make in the U.S. I can go in to my GP if I can get in there within 2 hours and pay $50. The guy was trained in the U.S. So you get these kind of perks all over the place. And for me, living here, being 30 minutes from an airport, and when we spent a month at a time in Europe because it doesn't cost anything to keep what's going here. We're legally tax free. So for instance, with my little problem with the electricity, I just bought on Amazon one of these, you can recharge the battery pack thingies. And it's like $200. by the time the taxes, it'll take a week to get here. It'll probably cost me about $350, right? But with that item, then it's basically 9 to 1 in the morning, and I could plug in everything I have plugged in right now to do this podcast with you, for instance, off of that battery pack. So the way I look at it, easy solution to a problem. They're telling you when it's going to be. It's generally a few hours in the morning. They don't do it on the weekends. They don't do it at night. So I just work around it, and in the end, I'm going to say I have more free time, more available money, less stress than if I lived in the U.S. Besides,
You're having an adventure.
Oh,
yeah, you're making lemonade. You're making lemonade. The best thing about living in Costa Rica is I'm close to the airport, so I can leave Costa Rica.
No, that's actually not true. The best thing you see, the truth is I came here for the monkeys, the rainforest, and more than anything, that priceless Pura Vida feeling of being almost average height. And that's not a joke.
Well, now we get to the real situation for moving here. Okay.
That's right.
You could have bought some lifts and live in Cabo.
Those. I've got those, but it's different. It's different. I mean, I almost moved to China for the same reason, but unlike other Jews, I just don't have an Asian fetish. You know? Yeah. So, but
I'm gonna let that wash over.
The thing about the height. See, I mean, my whole life, for most of my life, was burdened by my 5'3" height. You know, because you're in the Army. I'm gonna guess you're at least 5'8", 5'9", and probably taller. Yes.
Yeah, I was not in the Army. I was in the Marines. But okay, 6'3". Let's continue.
Okay, right. So you're like, you know, you're like the pretty tall boy that I always wanted to be. You see, but I wasn't.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, I married a woman I wasn't even attracted to. Stayed married for 28 years because I thought it was the best I could get. Until I had my transformation at age 53, and that's when I took the wrong pill and I ended up looking like this. That's what happened.
So the transformation was moving from the U.S. to another country where you would be perceived.
No, that was
taller.
that was all of this stuff happened. I mean, all of these crazy. I mean, it's funny, we were talking before about an adventure. You ain't heard nothing yet. And the real adventures in my life, the really big ones, the really cool ones, started when I was 53. And it all started because that was one of your questions. Where did it all start? I mean, I had my stuff when I was, you know, when I was a little kid, and I watched a 60 Minutes episode about how to win contests. And at 11 years old, I actually used that, won a national contest, got a set of encyclopedias that I already had, sold the old set. That's how I bought my first camera and darkroom and started a profitable photography business when I was 11. So that was in terms of creativity. But the fun part started when I was 53. And I took the wrong pill. And for me, the wrong pill was Prozac. If you don't know, Prozac is prescribed to cure depression. And I was depressed, and you might be too if you're married for 28 years to my Jewish princess. See, my Jewish princess was such a good cheater. She wanted me to apologize for her affairs. And I did. I mean,
okay.
She accused me of not giving her enough attention and all the affection she wanted and deserved, and I didn't. But then again, she's a 522.7, and psychologists out there will know that's emotional vampire. That's a medical term. So anyway, I was put on Prozac to
vampires are big these days.
Yeah, and you're gonna see the tie-in soon enough with the vampire thing. So I went on the Prozac to cure my depression, and boy, did it. Because it turned out, and I never knew this, I was 53, the Prozac revealed that I have latent bipolar disease or whatever you want to call that. And the one class of people who should never, ever take Prozac are people with any type of bipolar disorder. Because, yeah, if you have any type of bipolar disorder and you take Prozac, it makes you manic. It makes you crazy, or as I say it, I became,
Dr.
I went,
Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
yeah, well, or as I say, I was, it was kind of, it was like Dr. Jekyll meets the Incredible Hunk in Hugh Hefner's bedroom, and I became a sex crazed maniac. And that's when I discovered livejasmine.com.
Took a turn.
Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't.
And I always find that so interesting. No, livejasmine.com is $1 billion porn site. And, even in all of my stand-up shows, not a single man has owned up to even having heard of it, which I find strange. But anyway, no, livejasmine.com it's actually an educational site. Because the women who go on they're generally from Romania. See the vampire reference? And they get,
is it like a cam website?
Yeah, and the women get to practice their English, and the men get to practice masturbating on Zoom. And it's the kind of thing I never would have done as my normal self, but
win-win
with my transformation. And given I did mention, my cheating ex-wife, we had the problem of too much darn money, because I was an internet multimillionaire at the time. And so, I was in our 3-bedroom Manhattan apartment while she was hanging out in the 18-acre estate in New Paltz with her gallery manager friend. And that's and I was there on the Prozac, and suddenly, I went from a nebbishy, Jewish 5'3" normal guy living in New York City into the kind of man who would marry not one, but 2 Romanian webcam girls.
Oh, well, that's a scam, probably.
No, it wasn't. Well, in the end, it wasn't a scam. The
second one was a scam.
I lost a lot of money, but I ended up here. And that's the point of it, of adventures. It's how it ends up, And I mean, that's my whole comedy act. It's basically just, all I had to do was basically report. Say, like, I've heard of very successful comedians who make all their jokes up. I'm like, why would I do that when my real life is way better than anything I could possibly
write what you know,
possibly make up? Yeah. So how I got to Costa Rica. So I found Irina, the webcam girl, and Irina was from Romania, and all I knew for sure was that her name was Irina because they guaranteed it on the porn site. They said that our members' names are just as real as their screamy moany orgasms. Yeah. So, but then Irina said she loved me, and I felt like I was Richard Gere, and she was my pretty woman. Yeah. So, I got down on one knee on my satin semen-stained sheets, because after all, virtual love is sticky business and tricky business too. You've got to get your member close enough to the webcam to make it look enormous, but far enough away so you don't ruin the webcam with a load of what. And then
that's where that photography skills came in.
Yeah. No, I understand how the whole video thing is working. And then I took a very lovely, but affordable cubic zirconium ring and put it right up to the webcam.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was both happy and relieved that she said yes, because I knew marrying her was the only way I'd ever get out of that $5 a minute porn site charge. Now my Jewish princess, well, there's a word for her. It rhymes with Oh, you were thinking of witch or punt, I'm sure, but no. The word for her rhymes with Satan. Yeah, Satan rhymes with Satan, and so even after I gave her our entire multi-million-dollar fortune because I felt so guilty, she demanded an extra million in alimony.
Hmm. Well, she's got a
And
standard of living she has to live up to.
well, that's how it works in the US. It doesn't actually work like that in other countries. Um, and yeah, so there's actually, so as it turns out, there's an arrest warrant, that puts me in jail until I pay her the balance if I go back into the US. But I ended up in Costa Rica because I moved to Romania to be with Irina.
How's the weather
My
there? Is that similar to New York or is it different?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. No, it's pretty similar to New York. I mean, it's really,
Hot and cold?
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, the temperate zone kind of wraps around that same,
Is
the
that on the
same
same
level.
is it the same latitude as New York or is it farther south or north?
It's maybe a little farther south, but most of Europe is going to reflect,
So maybe like a Carolina
U.S.
then.
weather. Not quite as warm as that. So,
Oh,
I mean, in fact, no, it wouldn't be that. It probably is closer to New York because, excuse me, in the winter, it'll, it gets real. It can snow a lot and get really, really cold. So it's
okay.
probably, more similar to New York. But again, it's not really the weather that makes Romania interesting.
The roads have to be better than Costa Rica.
Excuse me, are the roads
They are.
mostly, but see, Romania has its third world kind of stuff going on. I mean, imagine you're driving in a country road at night, right? And
Okay.
it's dark and there's no street lamps. It's pretty rural, but cars are going on the road like 50, 60 miles an hour, and oh whoa, even though it's 11 p.m., there is a horse-drawn cart of some farmers doing something,
Yeah, you gotta
moving
get
down
that.
that road.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you gotta, some places have deer. There you have horse-drawn carts.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, wow, Romania. I could go on for. Romania is friggin' interesting, scary,
A lot
but
of
interesting.
castles? A lot of
There's
castles?
castles. Yeah, there's the
Nice.
Dracula. I mean, that's the whole. There's the Dracula Castle, as it's called, which Vlad the Impaler, who was an actual Romanian figure who used
Mhm.
to, basically, take off the enemy's heads and put them on spikes, and that's where the whole spike thing. That's Dracula was based
Yeah.
off of the story of this Vlad the Impaler.
Do you know
Excuse me.
how Vlad got rid of crime and homelessness in Romania? He
I'm
had a
not sure if this
castle.
is a joke or a historical
No,
tidbit,
this
but
is
I'm
his this
interested
is
either
I
way.
mean, it's as history as history is, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't there,
Okay.
but this is what I've heard.
All right.
He
Okay.
had a castle. He invited everybody there that were the homeless, the destitute, the criminals. They were going to have a big feast, and he got them all into the castle. He locked the doors and he burned it down. You can't do that these days because that's why we have the crime we have now. That's
That's right. It's a
unacceptable.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That sounds like what he probably would
the
have
people
done. Yeah.
loved
I
him.
mean,
The people that were alive.
yeah. Yeah. Well, but then you have um uh Romania with Ceausescu and the dictator who
Mhm.
fell. And I mean, he wasn't much loved. They kind of proved that when they took care of him at the end. So,
Yeah.
but it's just it's a interesting place. I mean, I love the food. It's These are people who are very proud, but also kind of beaten down, by because first you have the communism, and then it's really just a level of corruption that goes beyond anything you're likely to see. I mean, my experience with the corruption, um, when I didn't, as I mentioned about my Romanian webcam wives, when it was
Mhm.
getting ready to marry the second one. Let me finish how I got to Costa Rica. So I was there in Romania with Irina, my second wife, And because the way I was working was, as I still do, it's kind of my passion project. It's been for years. I teach students how to get a perfect SAT score because I beat the SAT. And that meant that when I'm in Europe, I end up working from 10 p.m. until about 5 in the morning, which equates to afternoon to evening for American kids. And Irina didn't like that. And she said, before we come back here and get married, we're ready to plan this big wedding, why don't we go someplace that's in a time zone where you can work more normal hours? Because I don't like these crazy hours. But it's also got to be a place where a Romanian can get in and you can stay somewhat long term. And at least at the time, 2012, Costa Rica was it. Politically stable. You can stay here for 90 days at a time. And then if you just leave the country for an hour, you can come back in for another 90 days. And I think they just made it 180. So they definitely make it kind of easy to stay here if you want to. So that part was good. And they let Irina in with a Romanian visa. Romanians are not liked or allowed in to most of the world. And it's really because they're being branded by the small percentage of Romanian population that are gypsies. Because the Romanian gypsies tend to, as a group, go into other countries and do scammy criminal stuff of one kind or another. You'll find them everywhere. You find them opening.
Not honest work like webcamming.
That's right. That's right. Not honest work like webcamming. Yeah. Exactly. Or as Irina, that was kind of interesting because imagine the fireworks between my ex-wife, who told me she'd had 3 sexual partners when we met, and that kind of blossomed to 33 over time of walking down the streets of New York, meeting a guy, seeing a certain look. Yeah. Oh, I found out about the 33 within the first 2 or 3 years. It didn't take that long.
Oh, but okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I knew about that, but of course, as my Jewish princess ex-wife liked to call them, the Romanian hooas. And I especially like this kind of.
She talks like Danny DeVito. That's great
because she's from the Bronx. You see,
I like it.
Yeah. So, it was always those Romanian hooas. In fact, at the end, when she got all the money and my pianos and the art and everything in the divorce, and all I got was a lousy t-shirt that said, "Bankruptcy is the price you pay for leaving me," on the front. And in the back, it says, "For that 25-year-old Romanian webcam girl," except she had crossed out webcam girl and written in webcam hua. So, yeah, so there was that, but the interesting dynamic was that my ex-wife considered Irina a whore because she was a webcam girl. And Irina
seems honest.
Was actually, she was saying she's a very conservative person, and she said, I only slept with one man who I thought I was going to marry. We're not promiscuous here in Costa Rica. A woman would never even go in to buy a condom because doing so would make you look that you are too promiscuous. The man always has to buy the condoms. And your wife had 33 lovers. She's the one. So it's an interesting perspective, between those two. Yeah. But in the end, Irina, it only lasted 2 years. It ended when I got this $5,000 bill from Dr. Feliciano, our mutual dentist here in Costa Rica. As it turned out, he was filling all of Irina's cavities. So.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
He was stripping my wife and my wallet. And
he was so conservative, though.
Well, maybe not in reality, I mean,
I see a pattern developing with the people you hang out with and the places you go.
And then after that devastating loss, or as I've said to people, come on, I just got cheated on by my last 2 wives. And the last time she did it with that was the other part. I forgot to mention the end of the story, because the joke was actually on Irina, because everybody else in town knew all about Dr. Feliciano's big gay orgies every weekend. So in the end, my webcam wife left me to be my gay dentist's beard. So like I said, that's pretty darn humiliating on a certain way. So what did I do? Well, I have to admit, you see, when we're down, when we're depressed, when life has done us wrong, we go with what we know. And that's why I got a haircut, bought some new clothes. I always wear the same thing. I call my look, you don't see the whole look, but if you saw me standing up, you'd call me, you'd understand my look. It's 1961 Jack LaLanne. Not sure if you're old enough to get it. But anyway,
Okay.
but so my looks was the same, but I was fresh. And I went right back on Live Jasmine showing my schmeckle to new webcam girls. And that's how I met Roxana.
Ah, that's a better
I mean,
name.
and Roxana, her webcam name was Indian Princess, and she looked like one. She had long dark hair, kind of caramel colored skin, and one of those Indian thingamajigs right up there.
Okay, so
Could have
Indian
been
from
it could have
India.
been a splash of marinara sauce. It's hard to tell on Zoom, but anyway, I was excited, and then when the webcam opened, the first thing Roxana said to me was, "Oh, I want to do you in real life." So it only took that much. And my
Does she have a
hand
British accent?
I'm not big on that. I just try to differentiate. I won't use that same voice for another
No,
girl.
did she have a British accent? That's what I'm. This is
No,
a
she
question.
didn't. No,
Oh,
she didn't. She had a Romanian accent, actually, which I wasn't picking up on at the
Romanian
time.
accent, but she's from ethnically India.
Well, because that's where
No trace of Indian accent?
because gypsies all migrated from India. That's where all the gypsies started. That's why they're brown. They are ethnically Indian. And then they moved mostly to Romania, hundreds of years ago, or whatever. And so the point was she called herself Indian Princess because she realized it was a marketing trick, and I fell for it, you see. And so there I
She's a
was
gypsy
after she said
princess.
she was a gypsy princess. You got it. And so, but anyway, I was just so excited that my hand just started moving uncontrollably down, right, to my
Well,
keyboard,
that's
so
what
I
you're
could
there
book a
for.
flight. So I could
Yeah.
book a flight on Expedia to to Bombay or Delhi or wherever. And that's when she told me she was living in Bucharest. So at least Roxana was not 21. I mean, not 25. like Irina. At least that she was 21, but
Huh.
and it was like a classic gypsy tale. She lived. Her dad had gambled away the family roof in a poker game, and they were living in this hovel, and that's why they needed 20 grand to fix it up. Who
Yeah.
better to provide that? Yes, and you know I got sucked in, especially to that Roxana had this powerful sexual vibe. That's not quite true. It was a powerful bisexual vibe. And we'd be in the middle of crazy sex, and she'd say, "Call us a girl, call us a girl," usually one of her cousins, and would come right over. And so, I mean, she was the one begging for it, and I wasn't going to say no. It is the fantasy of most men having that lesbian threesome with two eager lesbians. So, that kept me going for a while. And actually, Roxana was into the casinos, kind of like her dad, but what's $5,000 a week in losses at the casino when I'm getting threesomes with two cousins? So that may have been the best stupid thing I ever did. Then again, there was a time that that Roxana taught me a magic trick. You could take ecstasy tablets and grind them up into this fine blue powder and make it disappear by snorting it up your nose. And and then there was the time when Roxana showed up at 3 o'clock in the morning with 4 childhood friends, these guys that I assume were childhood friends. And so I tried to be cordial at 4 a.m. And then it started getting a little strange when they raided the fridge, drank all the alcohol, and demanded blowjobs from Roxana, which I thought was strange. And for childhood friends, and that's when I found out that they weren't actually childhood friends, but new acquaintances that she had made at this edgy. She basically brought home four serial killers from the after hours club, coincidentally known Satan. And luckily, we did get them out of the house safely. So I've had, like I said, that the adventure continues. I'm not dead yet, and who knows what tomorrow may bring.
Yeah, it's just a
Maybe it's
series of bad decisions, really.
yeah, but in the end, right? So here I am. I'm 65 years old. Most people think I'm 45. It's very cool that my wife, for whatever reason, she really likes older guys, and actually,
Right.
I heard a woman make a good joke about this. A woman, and she said, she goes, I really love older guys, and and people say I have daddy issues, but I don't think that's true. I love my daddy. I just love yours more. Um, so anyway, I'm in a situation like that, which isn't bad, and and it got me into the BW30 club. That's kind of exclusive. The BW30, have you heard about it? It's the club for men who are banging women 30 years younger than them. And
I
but in
I
order to
didn't hear
get
about that.
yeah, but in order to get in, you actually need legal proof. See, that was easy for me because I have a marriage license, and for Buzz Aldrin, he was 96 and he married a 66-year-old girlfriend. Easy for him too. Poor
Hmm.
Mick Jagger and Vladimir Putin. They got in the club, but they had to get in the hard way because it's got to be. You need a notarized letter if you're not married, and that can be hard to get from the woman you're banging in a cheap hotel room. But somehow they pulled it off. So anyway, so I'm in the BW30, and energy wise, it just kind of works out because I don't know that a woman my age could take me. I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Maybe it's just you're old and making bad decisions, and she's young and making bad decisions, and you just get together and make bad decisions, and that's
And
your.
you know what? Given our given her
If it
net
works,
worth, not mine.
yeah,
But now we get to running for president. Why don't we get to that? I mean,
running
that's an
for
act of
president
create.
from outside of the country. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a pretty creative act. I think so. And again, I do a lot of I love doing like what things that seem like they might be impossible. like like running for president, given that there is an arrest warrant and all, but as we can see,
You could get that taken care of.
criminality is not a factor in running for president of the United States. So I find that, juicily ironic as well. But no, it was in November, and I was just sitting here in my computer in Costa Rica, and frustrated as many Americans are with the choices available. And I was like, well, I've got a good pedigree. I graduated from Dartmouth. I've got a genius IQ. I'm an internet multimillionaire. I made millions of dollars. Made lots of. I've done as much as these guys, and I've got more vim and vigor because I've got the experience since I'm 65. But I don't look like I'm not hobbling, and I'm not a rapist. Yeah. So I'm not planning on it, but
Mhm, mhm.
and here's how all this crazy coolness evolved in it. First, the running for president. I go onto YouTube and discover it's 2 easy forms to fill out. And the one thing you need is a bank account, a business bank account in the name of the committee that's running for president. Now, just to avoid any possible corruption, here's how it works. The same person can be the candidate, the treasurer of the campaign, and the record keeper of the campaign. All
Mhm.
me. And the other fun fact is because it was in the last couple of weeks, I actually went through the process of getting a U.S. patent, trademark rather. I've had a couple, but I decided to trademark because it was just so much fun. One of my political slogans, which is the one. Am I allowed to curse on the show? I haven't yet, so I
Yeah,
can avoid it
that's
if.
fine.
Okay, so I just love the irony of having a U.S. trademark with the word "fuck" in it. And what I did was I said, well, obviously they're not going to let you do F-U-C-K, but I wonder if you can do F asterisk asterisk K. And I do a trademark search, and all this stuff comes up. There's fucking delicious frozen yogurt,
Mhm.
so I was like, oh, my slogan is "fuck it, we're all gonna die," and which, I mean, that's actually pretty deep. And I came up with it after the death of my only child.
Oh, that's true.
Thank you. But I actually wrote this book, Creating Joy, about how, look, they say, that the death of a child is the worst thing that can pretty much happen to anybody, right? But, and this is the thing that I think, look, I guess the question is, when your loved one dies, how long do you think they expect you to be miserable? Or even think of it for yourself. Like if you were to, you know, die tragically, accidentally, how long do you want your loved ones to be miserable? Most people, it's not, it's not, they're like, I don't want them to be miserable. So I'm like, well, she doesn't want me to be miserable. This is what it is. Now, how can I make lemonade? Is the truth.
Mhm.
And for me as a creative person, what I realized was all of these stories that I'm telling now, I would not be telling if my daughter was still alive.
Mm.
I wouldn't be saying things against her mother. I wouldn't be just speaking my truth, because a lot, I've upset a lot of people.
Mm.
There's a certain freedom in everybody that I had known for pretty much the whole first 53 years of my life now hates me. Mhm. My own brother took my ex-wife's side against Irina.
Did
Yeah.
that first marriage end around the time of your child's death?
No, no, it didn't.
Okay.
And since you bring it up, I mean, this is part of how I encourage other people to think about things, because again, how miserable do you think they want you to be? Or
Right.
how long are we supposed to feel bad? No, if you feel bad, you feel bad. I'm just saying that, and this is where "fuck it, we're all gonna die" comes from. So my daughter, with whom I had the strongest bond for her entire, until I left, which is what she was already 21 and in college. And it's funny because I really thought that I had been such a good guy, kind of holding out. I mean, I didn't have other opportunities, but I was pretty much miserable for most of my marriage, but I stayed, I guess, largely for my daughter. And so I thought, well, gosh, she's already a junior in college. I hardly see her anywhere. She hardly sees me anyway. And so when I decided to move to Romania, the first thing that I did is I said, I know this is upsetting, but I know how much you love to travel. Every time you have some free time, I'll pay, we can meet somewhere new in Europe. We'll make it into an
Mm.
adventure that we can have whenever you're free. Because in the end, it'll be more fun than we would have had if I didn't leave, and just hanging around the apartment or whatever. Now we'll go on these adventures. And her mother took care of that, but good. Consider that my daughter is incredibly talented, brilliant, amazing in every possible way, beautiful, but highly anxious, highly anxious. Um, in the end, she was on Prozac when she died, and she made the mistake of drinking tons of alcohol and snorting a bunch of cocaine on it, and
Mm.
then walking out her apartment, which is on the third floor, and deciding she wanted to take a selfie. So she climbed over the railing and fell to her death.
Mm.
Um, and but anyway, so I thought, okay, I'm going to try and make the best of this, and we're going to have these travel experiences. And then my ex-wife told her she wouldn't let her go because she didn't know which Romanian criminals I was hooked up with, and who might try to kidnap and torture her. So that put a stake in it, and and so then for the next 8 years, and coupled with the fact that even though her mother was a multimillionaire, she complained all the time about how I had done her wrong, and so anytime, because of me not paying that extra million, and so anytime I would talk to my daughter and mention, I took a trip here, or I did this, or I bought this, the next line would always be, if you have money for that, why don't you give money to mom? So are
She
you a
already got
father?
it all. No.
Okay. A father and kind of gets a little more, but any human being can kind of understand what's going on there,
Yeah.
So the point is that it was kind of 8 years of torture for me. And I'm thinking, and then what am I going to do when she wants to get married? And what am I going to do with the grandkids? And how is all that going to go? How am I can't even get into the country and all this. So it was pretty horrible. And again, I didn't do anything to stop that. She did something stupid and stopped that. And what's this whole fucking we're going to die is, first of all, when that happens, more than anything, it just brings home the fragility of life, that anybody can make one stupid mistake, or not even make a stupid mistake. Somebody else can make the stupid mistake, and it's over. And I started getting into this head of every day, if there's something that comes to my mind and I'm thinking of doing it, even if it's outrageous, and I do a lot of outrageous things, I ask myself whether I will feel regret if I, like if I'm suddenly dying tomorrow, will I regret not having done that today? And that actually pushes me toward probably more creativity, doing more things, and in the end, having a life that to me is much more vibrant and exciting than my life has ever been for the first however many years.
Certainly seems like there are more risks after 2012. Like, no, like there's probably in life, there's more things that you will not get to do than you will do. And then if you look at the world as in, am I going to regret not having done that? Then I think that sets you into the mindset more of taking risks. So going to Romania, risky. Going to Costa Rica, maybe less risky than Romania. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know a lot about Romania. It's a good lettuce, but I don't know. What do you think? Is it your life?
Well, let's
probably
talk
the
about
risk taking of it is on it.
Yeah, but see, the risk taking, I can kind of, I see myself better now. It's funny than I was able to see myself as a kid, right? And I'll talk about the risk, and this really does relate to the risk thing.
Okay.
When I was a little kid, I used to kind of think I was smarter than pretty much everybody. I mean, that was the feeling I got, right? But that's, oh my God, that's such an arrogant thing to say. You can't go around saying that. But it
What's
also
the age of
determines,
that? How old were you
when
when
was I
you were thinking that?
6 and 7?
Okay.
Yeah. And then the bottom at the end of that story is I have 169 IQ. So I was kind of right by, when I did take an IQ test. So I'm kind of right by just statistical numbers if you figure those out. But I guess the thing is that I would think something was possible, and everybody would say no. So even me doing that was already risky. Like in my high school, I was bored. It was it's a public high school. I didn't want to go. I don't know why I didn't want to go to the private high school, but I was in this high school, and the way that I flipped that was no one had ever done it before, but I went in and said, if I did all of the work that you would normally do in 4 years in 3 years, would I be able to graduate a year ahead? And they said yes. And the bottom line is, not only did I, and again, risky, right? You know, it's so much work and this and that. So, and then I was the valedictorian of the class ahead of me, not by a little, but by a lot. And actually, in this, like, it's 17 years, right? I guess that's all risk. And then they come to me close to graduation because life is always like this. The mother of the girl who would have been the valedictorian and spent her whole life assuming she was, now discovered at the last minute, I come in and take it away from her. So they tried to create the story, and they had one guidance counselor who was sympathetic to this, that I was breaking into their class and therefore shouldn't be allowed to be valedictorian. Now, meanwhile, my parents hadn't supported me doing this at all because they thought it was risky. I actually managed to figure out who my allies were in the school. There's a couple of very respected teachers. There was one guidance counselor. I basically told the story and got them to be my surrogate warriors I basically, using them, I fought and got to do my speech as valedictorian, right? And interestingly, with risk taking, that's really why I didn't get into Harvard or Princeton. From what I heard at the time, they were concerned about somebody coming in a year earlier. Like, are they going to have enough maturity? And that's why I ended up going to Dartmouth. So yeah, I mean, many of the things that when it comes to risk, the one thing that I think my experience proves I've been pretty good at is risk assessment. You know, in that the only time when we talked about the only time I actually lost money, like big money in a business, was the restaurant that I opened because Irina wanted something to do, you know, and I agreed to fund 25 grand with the idea that if it doesn't work, then that's the end. But of course, I mean, but
I don't think that's a failure. I think that's just a thing you do. That was an adventure.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have considered it such a failure, except that she continued to run it and refused to close it. So the loss was actually $150,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a bad idea. Yeah, and going back to risk, I don't think risk is bad. Risk is the spectrum. You know, everything's a spectrum.
Right.
But I think some risk you have to have. If you don't risk anything, then what do you get? You got to risk it to get the biscuit, as they say.
Right. And so I've been pretty good at even here. Sometimes I almost ended up in jail. Many years ago. And it's so good that there's that statute of limitations. I'm not going back to the US anyway. Because this was entirely a crime of hubris. This was a crime of hubris. Because with my first wife, my first ex-wife, you know, actually, I'm kind of like Napoleon, except because I'm 5'3", and you know, I've got the Napoleon complex, and you know, Napoleon, as you were saying, Napoleon, you know, felt the need to compensate by conquering the entire world, as opposed to just buying a nice pair of elevator shoes like I do. But beyond that, you know,
5'3" is not bad. I mean, you could be if you were driving a truck, you'd have plenty of room. If you were in an RV, the bed would be no problem. I mean, there's pros and cons of any size.
Yeah, but like the funny, and it's funny, we just went to a hotel the other night, and someone in the hotel, upon seeing my wife, they didn't know her, and they said, "Oh, you're with the skinny guy," and I was so excited.
Nice.
I'm always the short guy, but see, here in Costa Rica, I stand out as the skinny guy. Yeah, okay. But you know, in the US, it's a thing. I mean, I did a little experiment. It was during the time when rocky time during my first marriage. I think I put myself on one of the Match.com or one of those places, and it was my picture, it was my bio, everything was real, except I just changed 5'3" to 5'11".
Mm.
And I got it, and I got this deluge.
False
Like
advertising.
every beautiful woman going, oh yeah. But then, you know, it was an experiment, and I wasn't going to go meet them. I was going to pull that on. I'm 5'11". But it showed me, okay, this is what I get when I'm 5'11", and then I changed it and put and put 5'3". And you seen Baby Reindeer by chance?
I have.
Okay, many people have. Let me tell you that the one person I got, one instead of like 75 or so when I was 5'11", I got one who bore striking resemblances to Martha. So that is what I'm going to say about the, you know, the potential for your average 5'3" guy in the U.S. And like I said, it's better here, but separate.
Well, maybe unrealistic expectations of people in the U.S. on both sides.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that, and first of all, a lot of it is confidence, because even in Romania, and it was wild for me, because when I was younger, you know, like I said, I wasn't this pretty, and I didn't go to my prom, and no one was ever hitting on me, and I didn't lose my virginity until I was 25. It was, you know, it was not fun. And now I am regularly hit on by women in their 20s. So whatever I didn't have then, somehow, it just, you know, I'm not. It's funny because Louis C.K., the comedian, did this bit about being 45 and walking down the street and feeling as though a woman is, you know, women are looking right through you, that you don't exist anymore in that way. So just at my age, and I'm an equal opportunity enticer. I just got dick pics on my phone on my 65th birthday. Never got
It's
those.
good to know it still works. You know, you still got it.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? People want to know that, so it makes you feel good, whatever. But anyway, I was talking about how I ended up in jail, or almost, and the risk. So we were running this massage business. The idea was, it was really the first pregnancy massage business. We started in like 1991 because we bought this special table from a Seattle carpenter that has an infinitely adjustable sling that fits into a hole, so a woman can actually lie on her stomach. And the interesting marketing thing we found down the road was women were more excited about lying on their stomach than the massage. So we would
sell the table.
Right. Well, we marketed that, but then we hooked it in. I mean, that was the part that I figured out a way to get this covered 100% by health insurance. So the pregnant women just knew they could come in and get 4 or 5 massages a week. And that's the first time I became a multimillionaire. With that little business. But before it actually, and that was actually the turnaround, because the way I almost got to jail was when it was smaller, before I had figured out the insurance thing. My ex-wife was an amazing massage therapist, and the business was growing faster than she could accommodate it. So she was like, well, why don't I just teach you? And for whatever reason, I have this natural ability that I'm really, really good at massage. And so
That's
little by
probably a good
little,
line.
well, luckily I don't need it no more. See, I just
IQ 160s. I'm really good at massage. 5'11" on paper. What do you say?
Actually, do you know how my real trick was to get these foreign women in their 20s to feel comfortable around me?
Just tell them you're American.
I had a Wikipedia page at the time. I had a Wikipedia page until I got into this skirmish with this business guy, and he got thugs to take it down. That was exciting. But
just as a little side thing, do you see the irony of saying you're in Costa Rica where medical, like a colonoscopy, is only $300 versus you were in America finding a way to charge insurance for 4 and 5 massages a week? Do you see, like, maybe
well,
you were
I
part of the
don't know.
problem?
I don't. No.
No,
I don't say it's
okay. Okay.
No,
All
because
right.
you realize, and see, in all the here, it's the, especially now that I'm an atheist, which I only became after I was the first Jew to ever be excommunicated. And I can tell that story, bro.
Oh,
But
did the Pope excommunicate you?
no, I'm gonna say my rabbi did, and when
Oh,
and
I
yeah,
thought
I'm gonna
Catholics did excommunication.
yeah, they do, but you know, every religion has their something similar, you know.
Hmm.
But what happens? So I'm doing all these massages, and I get this idea because I wasn't licensed, but at the time I was like, well, licensing is stupid. At the time, it was like New York, you had to be a license for massage therapy, but not in Connecticut, not in New Jersey. You know, like, okay, this is BS, right?
Not on Craigslist.
And then the other thing that was happening was women were coming. These are mostly Upper East Side women who had been all over the world, and everyone they're like, this is, you know, I've been throughout the whole world, I've been throughout this whole city. Nobody does it like you know. So you know, which of course builds your hubris.
Yeah, that's a better
And
tagline than "F it, we're all gonna die." But
yes,
so,
for a different purpose and a different time, for a different purpose and a different time. So, so I get this idea that I will just forge myself a license and put it on the wall, and then no one will even think about it. And that worked fine for years. During this period, we had a woman that we knew, and also you have to look back at how did you initially get connected with this person. See, I've learned certain lessons. I probably wouldn't have got connected with this person before. The way I actually met this woman, Anita, who was a friend of, you know, my ex-wife at the time. Anita worked in a health food store, and my smart Bronx wife figured out that she made friends with Anita, and Anita hated her boss, and so she would go in there to buy a bunch of groceries, you know, and this was before scanning. It was years and years ago. And so, but Anita would ring things up at 10 cents on the dollar. You know, like like it would say $4 for this item. She'd ring it up as 40 cents, blah, blah, blah. And then Satan would show up with this huge bag of groceries, usually $40 worth of groceries for $40. And I remember saying, you know, there's no better bargain in the world than outright stealing. And but she didn't necessarily see the way. But that was,
you wouldn't have to wait in line.
That was the first connection with Anita. So over the years, now Anita had two kids from a husband who had gone crazy, and so she was living on welfare. And meanwhile, getting back to the massage, we would try to hire these massage therapists who were licensed and had been trained, and their hands were awful. Like they may have learned the stuff, but it was like they couldn't deliver a high enough product. So this woman happened to be very strong, big hands.
Anyway, but
okay. I don't even need to go there. I don't need to go.
Okay.
But no, but part of it is if it's done correctly. Here, simple principle. In many cases, pain is actually caused by the shortening of muscles, or you know, the muscles spasm around nerve endings, things like that. And if you know what you're doing, and that's the key, if you know what you're doing, and part of it is just hand sensitivity, you know, just feeling beneath the skin and being able to mold. If you can, and see, most can't. This is why I rarely get massages, because they make me crazy. I once went to Jamaica, started a massage. First, the woman starts banging on the kidneys, which is there's not many things you're not supposed to do in massage.
That's not good.
But that's the one that's the one that why you were supposed to go to massage school. If nothing else, just don't do that. And I'm like, wait, how did you guys get trained? And of course, they had no training. So over the next 2 days, I started doing work. There I am on vacation, doing workshops for the entire massage staff at the Sandals Resort. But anyway, so
I mean, basically, you just need a Theragun and a lacrosse ball, and you got your massage needs covered. But okay.
Well, it can.
Have you used the Theragun? Have you used the Theragun?
I haven't. I will have to. I will see if I can. Well, I can always get it from
Amazon.
From Amazon. That's right. Yeah. Exactly. I will consider that. But anyway, the point was
small business.
So we were so happy because we taught her. She actually, her hands were really good, And then when she made enough money that she actually went to massage school and got licensed. And so here we took someone who had been on welfare. Now she's making 60 grand a year. She's able to pay for right. And then, and she's working for us, and suddenly she starts showing up late for appointments. She starts, being nasty to us. Where we have to fire her. She was the only one who knew the whole deal about our operation, which was first, we got all our business because we were the only ones who thought to go into OBGYN's office, not really ask, just say to the receptionist, hey, we do pregnancy massage. Can I put this brochure over here? Everybody else in New York at the time was trying to make appointments with the doctors who didn't have time, and no appointments were ever made. So we figured, since they're so busy, we'll just kind of be like, this is okay, right? And it worked, and we're getting all this business. After we fire Anita, I start showing up in offices. She's got her stuff right next to ours. Basically the same message, same everything. I'm like, and I just couldn't take it. And when I could, I started trying to throw her brochures into my backpack and run, it was a stupid game. I got caught one time. The woman who caught me was friends with Anita. And then Anita called the New York State Massage Board on Donna against me for being an unlicensed person doing massage. So that ended up in tens of thousands in legal fees. But for me, because of the issue of the forged license, that pushed into criminal. So I needed my own separate attorney. Forget the guy's name, but he was the guy who defended the doctor who carved his initials into his patient's stomachs. So I was right up there with that guy, okay. And oh my God, that was probably the scariest time of my life. And I remember I had to give the guy, it was going to be 20 grand. I had to give him 10 grand up front. And then after a while I said, I'm going to bet on the stupidity of Blue Cross Blue Shield, who they were worried about was going to go after me for this license thing. I said, I'm going to bet they're never even going to see it. So if this thing falls apart, can I only owe you the $10,000? And the guy agreed. And it did. And yeah, but it was fun.
Well, the licensing, I imagine
almost fell in,
I imagine a lot of places licensing is just a cash grab. When you talk about the government and you got to get a license for this, a license for that, a license for this, that probably more than not, it's just an unnecessary thing where they make this government machine to be able to collect licenses from massage therapists and things.
To an extent, that's true. To an extent, that's true. Let's play devil's advocate against me. Okay, what I did is, it goes against the rules. The main kinds of offenses that that the same board, there's the massage therapy, but it's also part of the state health
the same one that said you needed to get a COVID vaccination. Continue.
No, but the same one that says the doctors can't fuck their patients. Okay, and there's a lot of that they find out about, or rip off their patients, or rip off Medicare, or a massage therapist who actually literally injures someone. Because the interesting thing was that relative to the not being a licensed massage therapist, nothing was done to me, nothing could have been done to me because I was out of the system. I really was.
Yeah,
that's why they went after. Exactly. There you go. So I'm just playing a little bit devil's advocate. I think it can be seen to have a positive, societal benefit.
Yeah, a little bit of oversight to make sure people aren't hurting other people. Yeah, that's fine.
That's all. Yeah.
But people corrupt everything.
Well, they do. And speaking of corruption, I never got to my in Romania the best corruption story, because see if you find it as striking as I do. And again, the third worldness of it, because I'd already done, I think they give you have to do the AIDS test, the STD test, blood, all of these things, right? And
to get married?
To get married. Yeah, to get married in Romania.
Yeah, you used to have to do that here. Now you don't.
Right. But so I'm like, okay, that's somewhat reasonable. So you do all that, but then you have to get sign off from the assigned doctor for whatever town you happen to live in. It's like there's this one person in every town that doctor who's decides whether or not you get married.
Oh, yeah. It used to be something like that in the U.S.
It wasn't. I mean, I got married in the 1984, and all I had to do was take. Actually, all I had to do was take the blood test for syphilis. That's what they
Okay.
made me do in 1984. But anyway, so I'm there in the office, with my gypsy princess, and I think the wedding is already planned for like 5 days away or something. And she's like, "You don't have the chest X-ray." And we're like, "Well, that wasn't on the list." She goes, "Yeah, well, you need a chest X-ray to prove you don't have tuberculosis." and I'm like, "I'm not bringing you no tuberculosis. I'm thinking, I'm American. I was like, you guys have that problem. We don't have that problem."
Mm.
But my my gypsy princess knew how things were played, and she basically pulls out the equivalent of $30 in Romanian cash, and she puts it on the table and moves it toward the doctor, and the doctor just takes it and goes, "I don't think we need the chest X-ray." And what was so fascinating to me is, like I said, corruption, bribery. I know it happens everywhere, but again, and I'm not saying a doctor wouldn't be corrupted, but to be corrupted and to risk your medical license for $30,
Yeah.
that's what stuck with me. I mean,
Yeah.
it
It's a
was
volume
like,
thing.
wow. What?
It's a volume thing. You got to do it to everybody to make it worth it. So it's not $30. It's, $30 300 times a month.
Yeah, but it's a small town, it's not gonna
Yeah.
happen. Yeah, anyway, so that was just,
That
I
sounds more
found
like
that quite interesting.
extortion than, and it's been a while since I've read the definition of that, than just outright, it's not like you needed the chest X-ray. They were just saying you needed a chest X-ray. So it's,
I don't.
they
First
were
of all, I'm not
extorting
even
money
sure
from you.
that because I mean, the other thing is that the laws and regulations are so Byzantine and stupid. I mean, or what is real or what isn't real.
Mm.
There was finally huge public demonstrations. This is right around 2013, 2014, right when I left to come uh, to Costa Rica, where I've been since. Because what happened was nobody filed fire regulations. Everybody just bought off the fire regulator. And
Mm.
this was a kind of underground club that was overfilled. And there was like 400 or 500 kids in there. And they started using pyrotechnics in the show, which basically lit up the whole ceiling. There was some kind of material that
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to be in a public space. And I mean, they even made a documentary about it because it got even worse than that with the corruption. Because
It's like the Great White Shift.
not only were hundreds, I forget how many died, how many had horrible burns. I mean, it was just horrible, horrible, horrible. And then they trace it back. Oh yeah, they just paid off the fire inspector, and now this happened to all these people. Then there were all these people with horrible burns. Turns out that whatever the disinfectant that was used in 2 of the major hospitals
Mm.
was bought from a scammer who had basically diluted the anti-infection, whatever stuff he was selling, to 2%
Mm.
instead of
Nice.
100%. So all of these burns started getting washed in fluid that didn't do a darn thing. It was just, and then they had to ship them to countries all over Europe where people could actually trust the medical care. Bad things happen sometimes
Yeah.
when
That's
you're
tough.
corrupt. Yeah. And in the end, it didn't change that much. They did. And there's a documentary about the antiseptic scam that followed the fire tragedy. I mean,
Mm.
they're kind of They've been beaten up a lot. I mean, Vlad was just the beginning, with beating these people
Is
up.
Romania considered emerging third world or first world?
It's definitely not first world yet. Probably
They're
considered
probably
second world.
emerging.
Yeah, and something again, it's seeing the benefits of wherever you are. I was actually planning all along to have Romanian citizenship, which purely from a both coolness and economic standpoint would be better than Costa Rican because I was already a Romanian resident because I married Roxana. And when she decided that she wanted to divorce me, that was an interesting story because it turned out that she was having an affair with a taxi driver during almost our entire relationship. And then she got pregnant with him, which was only a few months after I had got my vasectomy. And actually, no, I had 2 vasectomies in Romania. That was interesting because supposedly after the first one, my tubes grew back. And it's either that or else the Romanian medical system is not all it's cracked up to be. But so with all of that, then Roxana decides that we need a divorce. And I'm like, well, if we could just stay married on paper, I mean, you're only 21 unless you're planning on marrying someone else in the next couple of years. If you'll just let me do that, stay married to you for 4 years, then I'll be able to get Romanian citizenship. It is insanely cheap to live in Romania. Insanely cheap. I mean, you get an amazing apartment like $500-600, 10% on the dollar on the groceries for real, just because everything is so cheap. So you can live like an absolute king. At that point, you're an EU citizen. So travel any EU country whenever you want without even a passport, just an ID card. Right? It's all very cool. And I said, and I'll give you X amount of money per month, like as an allowance. And she was like, if you gave me 40 grand up front, then I could buy an apartment, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, you couldn't codify this deal in writing because, it's between a husband and wife. And then right after she got the money, she decided that it was my fault because she saw me going on a date with another woman, even though she was divorcing me. And she couldn't take that because she was too jealous. So I had to leave the country. So that's how I ended up back in Costa Rica. And that's a good, if we're here to talk about creativity, because I like this one. This is how and if anybody wants to see my wife, just go to harveywizard.com. There's a picture there. I'm very proud. She's gorgeous and brilliant and everything else. But anyway, how did I meet her? I used the George Costanza technique from Seinfeld.
The opposite?
No.
You just did the opposite of what you normally would do?
No, it's the
George
was Costanza. Here, well, it may have been one of his techniques. I'm referring to the time when he met a beautiful receptionist who didn't want to give him the time of day. And he realized that once he showed her a photo of, turned out it was actually Jerry's old girlfriend, who was much prettier. Okay. When he showed the photo of supposedly his old beautiful girlfriend, that photo gave him entree to the Beautiful Woman Club. The idea that if a woman assesses that you've been with a beautiful woman, then you may be good enough for her. Right. And so the one thing I got from Roxana, minus, she was super strong. She dislodged my 4 front teeth with a well-placed elbow and like beaten women everywhere. I told the dentist I fell. But when
she was banging the dentist, right?
No. This is Crazy Ex-Wife number 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, this is Roxana. This is the gypsy, the gambling gypsy, the bisexual gambling gypsy.
The first Romanian is the one that got with the dentist.
That's right, the guy with the dentist. The second one got with the taxi driver.
Did you go to the dentist that the first one was going with?
Oh my! Well, yeah, that's what made it
be a good plot twist.
Yes, I did. Oh, I did. You see, I don't even give all the details because it's just too much.
Okay.
Here's the real story with the dentist. And when we found a little bit about the dentist. No, the dentist was both of our dentists. That's part of what made it so painful. He was both of our dentists. So you figure there's some kind of you're my patient. I'm not supposed to screw you or your wife, but maybe not. So anyway, it was a group of 5 of us who went on a trip to Aruba. It was Irina and me, my lawyer Carlos, the dentist Dr. Feliciano, and a woman who was a friend of Irina's. Turns out, and I find this out only in pieces. Well, the first thing that I find out from Carlos, who's rooming with Dr. Feliciano, is that he's out every night with gay lovers. Um, but so, but in addition to
Dentist?
that, yeah, the dentist, he's a gay guy. See, because in Costa Rica,
That's right. He's the
it's
she's the beard. Okay.
it's frowned upon to be gay, and so people will try to go on the down low so as not to hurt their business, things like that.
In Costa Rica.
In Costa Rica, yeah, it's a
but
conservative, very Catholic
yeah.
country.
But they're off fossil fuels, so we're in good shape. It's worth.
That's right, but
trade
they're all
off.
fossil fuels. Exactly, it's a trade-off.
There's no
So
electricity,
anyway,
but that's okay.
so it was one night. I think I went to bed early, and when I find out later, because the woman who was with us had the hots for Dr. Feliciano, not knowing he was gay, and she was the one who was following Irina and him, and so she's the one who reported back to Carlos that they had been hooking up on the beach, which is something I only found out years later because people they didn't know, should I tell him, shouldn't I tell him? So that's how I know, the whole thing began. But I didn't know it at the time, and I certainly didn't know it after that point when I was going to him for a cleaning, and he discovered 7 cavities that hadn't been there a month before.
But he's not. But he's gay, and he's still with your lady, with your webcam lady.
Maybe he's bisexual. Maybe I mean he did have sex with her. So whether he enjoys
why not you?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't his type. I mean,
I'd feel the worst about that.
I don't feel the need to be every gay man's type. It happens enough. I've gotten enough in life from it.
Insulting.
It's not. I use it for all it's worth. You want to know how I saved 100,000?
I don't mind. I don't mind the attraction being out there. I'm saying that he would get with your wife and not you is insulting.
Well, I didn't really see it that way. But what was more insulting was he found these cavities that didn't exist. And that's actually, this is the truth. The $5,000 thing was just to come up with a shortcut of telling the story in a comedy routine, right? It just to get the idea out faster. But the reality was I kept going to this guy. There's another one. There's another one. And at the end of it, I was like, oh, he was basically humiliating me. Not only am I doing your wife, but now I'm going to get money out of you for cavities that don't exist, and there's no way you can prove it, kind of thing. So that's how that one ended.
If you could work in for the comedy routine, if you could work in somehow that he found 7 cavities and you woke up on the massage table for pregnant women, then go from there. You can figure it out.
Yeah, but Baby Reindeer's already done that story. So I gotta explore the more fertile ground.
Allegedly, that guy is getting sued now by the actual stalker because he made money making that show.
Well, of course, nobody gets sued unless they make money. What I find most interesting about that whole lawsuit thing is fundamentally she's upset because they portrayed her as fat. She'll give that she's a psychotic, stalking, mentally ill person, but don't call her fat. Yeah, that's And
that show was
did you see the Crazy Eyes?
Yeah, she did great. She acted great. But
what I find, I mean, this is really easy, and only because I'm crazy, and sometimes that can be part of the trick, because my wife has borderline personality disorder, and I have bipolar disorder, and it works. It's like 2 crazies that fit together, and we respect each other's craziness, and so that can work. But I know Crazy Eyes. I can tell Crazy Eyes like that. And when that Fiona Harvey, this is so, and then I'm going to get back to the president thing and why I can say that, you know, Fiona Harvey has the crazy eyes without any fear of anything. I mean, you just take one look at that woman's face. It's just that hard to describe, but it's crazy eyes. And the thing about, so getting back to the president thing that I found interesting was when I got my patent for my trademark, rather, for "fuck it, we're all gonna die." In order to get a U.S. trademark, you have to go through this whole verification process. You have to give your social security number. They have to say, they don't just let anybody get a trademark. You know, you got to verify who you are, and then once you have your account, then it's easier. But when it comes to running for president, they don't even ask your social security number. And what I found so cool is I'm like, okay, you may be surprised to know that Harvey Wizard is not my birth name.
Mm-hmm.
You don't look surprised.
I suspected it. I suspected it.
So you see, it's so my social security number is not matched with Harvey Wizard, and yet no problem. Harvey Wizard is the candidate, and in spite of the Patriot Act, there's all these new internet banks that make it easy. So within 15 minutes, I had a U.S. bank account in the name of Harvey Wizard for president, which is the last piece I needed to be running for president. So I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, that was interesting that I was able, you know, that was able to do that. And then it was like, well, what can I do with this? You know, and getting back to the idea that every day I'm like, will I regret not doing this? You know, if I died tomorrow and didn't do this. And, you know, and I was thinking, at least for me, maybe I may be an old purist or something, but I just prefer having a president with a decent IQ, who's not a rapist, not a grifter, not a scammer, not all the things that Donald Trump is. And for me, at least, even if I was
Allegedly
into his policies, okay, but see, that's a good thing. Getting back to what I get to do, and I discovered because of my whole weird situation. Once this thing happened with my ex-wife, you know, getting all the money and then having this $1 million judgment against me and the, you know, putting me in jail until I pay it. And the reason I get put in jail is because it's alimony. It's not child support, it's alimony. It's through the family court, and that's what allows them to, you know, to throw in the jail thing. But anyway, I lost my train of thought. I don't often do that.
Alimony, you got the bank account.
Yes, exactly, the alimony in the bank account. So then I always have to worry about my ex-wife. Maybe at some point, because it's a lot of money, you know. Actually, I paid her too, so I owe her 800 grand plus interest now. So it's enough money that if she decided, she might want to try to get my money here or something like that. And then when my daughter died, I said, you know, I don't want my wife to have to go through all the hassle of getting the money and then worrying that maybe my ex-wife will try to get it from her and all that kind of hassle. So I basically, at that point, really for my current wife's safety and my peace of mind, everything is in her name. The only thing I own in the world is the right to live in this house till I die. That was the only thing that the lawyer threw in. You should at least have that. So everything, she owns the business, I own nothing. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. Because now I'm basically as invincible as Giuliani without anybody easily being able to sue me and drag me into court, no matter what I say. So you see, when I say that that Donald Trump is a rapist and Donald Trump is a liar and Donald Trump, he can try to sue me, but he's not going to get anything. And
I don't know if he would bother trying to sue anyone. Just a word on Donald Trump, though.
Okay.
I think that he's probably...
You think he'll try to kill me? So
no,
go ahead.
I think he's probably the best president that we've had in my lifetime. I don't remember much of Reagan. I remember when Reagan got elected, and I remember how much they Yeah, I remember the Don't Say No campaign, or Don't Say No, the Say No to Drugs campaign, and them making fun of him for the cognitive decline, the whole Genesis video and everything like that. But just as far as an American living in America, I think the 4 years of Trump were pretty good. I don't remember an American being in America having 4 years that economically and otherwise were as good. There's a lot of civil unrest, but there's a lot of civil unrest now. So I don't know. I think that before that, Trump probably didn't win for whatever reason, didn't win the second time. People were scared that people would riot too much. And I think now you can see just through living that those people are going to riot anyway. So I don't know if you're in a campaign, if it's worth tearing down the other person or if it's worth talking about the issues. So if you have good ideas about what America needs to do to thrive, then that's great. But to tear down the other candidate, I think it's just too easy, and it takes away from the whole thing of what being the president is all about.
Well, there's a couple. I mean, if I'm going to be realistic, and this is the interesting thing, I don't realistically expect to win by 2024. But as it turns out, you can declare your presidency whenever you want. So if I don't win, the day after the election, I'm going to be running for 2028. And my long-term strategy is that I'm not going to be spending advertising money to get votes.
Well, what's your platform, I guess? And not just, there's a commercial one time I saw that said, my platform is to build a platform. I like that. But
no, well, first of all, we'll start with this. We'll start with jobs for all, scholarships for all, brutal honesty for all. Because and the one thing that I can offer, as if we're going to get into my president, what's good about running for president, is that if you didn't have to be beholden to the people who had given you money, it would actually allow you to do things that were right for everybody, and to be honest, and to just just to tell truth to people. I mean, the fact that because the simplest thing of all relative to making the US better is to get the tax code to a point where people with more money are supporting the society. I mean, it's what actually works in all of these supposedly most modern societies, like the European societies, when there's a heavier tax base. So yeah, that's number one. And the point is that to be able to talk about that becomes more difficult if I'm receiving money from any of the large companies that are benefiting from the current tax structure. I mean, it's to me, it's kind of like an easy thing. It's like when you stop paying for infrastructure, when you stop paying for things that are actually going to help people, when you allow inequality to get worse and worse and worse and worse, that it is going to degrade the society. And in order to actually speak about that, you can't be in a position of having to take money from the companies that are benefiting from getting away without paying their fair share of taxes. So that's number one. But it's funny with the Israel thing. I had created, like 2 months ago, this kind of T-shirt, which is of Netanyahu. It's AI helped me. It's Netanyahu holding a bayonet, and for those who don't know, Netanyahu's nickname is Bibi, B-I-B-I, and so it's just him holding a bayonet, and the title is Bibi the baby killer. And then the quote is, with Palestinian babies, the foreskin is just the beginning. And my point relative to the whole Israel debacle is that what is making it worse, and has always been making this particular, and what this really came from, is Netanyahu and Netanyahu's hardline policies. And it's interesting that 2 months ago, I was like, we should just stop, giving the arms until, as long as they're using it to indiscriminately bomb the Palestinians. And then finally, 2 months later, like, oh, I guess we got to do that. So even in terms of the speed with which decisions are made, so much of it has to do with people worrying either about their political outcome or, fundamentally it's that. It's the political outcome or the power outcome, all of those things. So nobody is really in it. And it's hard to be really in it for the country if you're only getting there off the backs of people, with money that is, that is then going to determine what you're even able to do.
That's a lot of stuff.
Go ahead.
Hold on. So,
okay, go ahead.
Talking about campaign financing. Yeah. When you get money from somebody, you do feel like you owe them something, but you can just as easily be a scoundrel and take money versus not take money from people. You can and still be a scoundrel. So I'm not sure that's the answer to everything, but I understand that when you have big business and special interest affecting it so much that the scales are tipped seemingly uncontrollably to corruption. But so that needs to be fixed somehow. And I think the way that Bernie raised money is, at least the way I understand that he raised money during his campaign, was from individual donations. I think that's good, or individual contributions. That's the way to do it, because now that's your constituency, and you know what your values and morals are, what they expect. So a little truth in it, I think, does more than money. With the taxes, there's a biblical story. It might be in the Talmud, I'm not sure, that talks about, I get those two confused, the Bible and the Talmud, as far as the
Talmud is the Jewish comment. The Talmud is the Jewish commentary. So it would be the Bible.
I've learned them. I've studied them both. So I get, they blend together for me. But
okay.
There's the story of building the temple, where the rich people said, we're going to build this temple and we're going to give this much money. And then the rabbis or whoever was in charge of building the temple said, no, everybody gives the same. So the temple is no more yours than the poor person. Everybody pays the same amount. We build the temple together. I think that's a better tax look than what we have now, or talking about a fair share and whose fair share is what and how they define it. Because it seems like right now, a lot of citizens don't pay taxes and a very few pay a whole lot of taxes. So I don't think the fair share is right. And think of everything that the rich people do for the poor people as far as providing jobs and things. Now, you can have bad rich people and bad poor people, and good rich people and good poor people. So that just depends on morality. And maybe that's one thing that America has lost, is, as a whole, some sort of agreed upon morality, where if it's not the Judeo-Christian values, what is it? Because if you don't have it, it's replaced with something. It's just, what is it? Is it just more of a moral relativism that we say it's right because that's what our society says? Or is there something greater than us, outside of us, that we have in our feeling that we know this is wrong and we should have some sort of moral value for it? So for taxes, I think the answer would be a flat tax that you just pay 5, 10%, whatever it is, out of every dollar earned if you're doing income, or every dollar spent if you're doing it the other way, and everybody pays the same. So then you could all say, well, we're all part of it. I don't know if you need an income tax. Like, I don't know if you need to get taxed on the money you make and then get taxed again on selling or when you spend it. Or maybe you do that differently for a state versus the federal government. But I think the federal government is a lot larger than it needs to be. And that's what leads to the corruption that basically the federal government's job is to protect the country from not being a country anymore. So you gotta, if you're thinking of it in like a castle setting or a Jamestown setting or something, you got to defend your people from the outside. And then the government of the states is what defends the people from the people themselves. It might be an oversimplification, but I think the answer is
Okay.
everybody pays the same percentage. That doesn't mean that a poor person has to pay $1 million in taxes and a rich person pays $1 million. That means if you make $1 million, you pay 10% of that. If you make $1, you pay 10% of that.
Right.
What do you think about that
And
versus a fair share?
well, the even if you started that way, it probably wouldn't work, because whatever that percentage was, this is, how the tax code even evolved into what it is. If you really looked
It's
at the
crazy.
numbers, you would find out that the poor people are still paying too much and the rich people are still paying too little, even based on
How's that?
the percentage.
When you got poor
Because,
people that aren't paying at all.
well, but that's my point. The idea is that the reason poor people aren't paying at all now is because they're basically surviving, even paying nothing.
They're
Just, there's
surviving
so
on the
many,
rich people paying taxes. Without the
but
rich people paying the
they're
taxes, there
surviving.
would be no
Okay,
country.
what I'm saying is that the way that, let's talk about how the taxes used to be set up when inequality was less striking. I mean, does that matter?
It's less striking. Okay.
Meaning that in the 50s, the difference between the 50s and 60s, the difference between what the poorest people made and the richest people made was much smaller than it is now. It keeps the distance keeps growing. All of these things that people complain about, which are true, right? Why is it that people in their 30s now can't buy a house? Because because everything has been altered and changed, and the fact that so much money is now in the hands of a much smaller group of people who then can speculate. It becomes these rich people controlling the dynamics of the market in a way that they didn't used to. I mean, essentially, unions used to be the kind of. Let me start by saying this. After everything that you said, the thing that I've learned in my 65 years of life, and what I believe absolutely,
Okay.
is people will do whatever they can get away with. And it applies to everything. It applies to kids, it applies to adults, it applies to countries, it applies to all of these things. And while we don't want to look at it, that's kind of the truth.
Yeah. People are mean.
And but even here's actually something that happened with my with the business that I talked about, with getting health insurance to cover for the massages for these pregnant women.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
and for a couple of years, everything was fine. The way that I started it is that I had looked at the health insurance contract. They didn't write their contract in a way that could have protected them from me being able to charge them. What the contract read was, we will pay for physical therapy services delivered by a licensed healthcare professional. Now, remember I told you how it was unusual that New York was licensed and the other states weren't? But based on the law, any New York State massage therapist was licensed to perform the exact same procedure codes as a physical therapist.
Okay.
So if they wanted to protect themselves from me being able to charge them, the contract should have been written to have said only licensed physical therapists. But they didn't. So I said, oh, okay, I'm going to exploit their contract, because I got all these OBGYNs who had been able to my way into their offices now. They got such great reports. They were all more than happy to write prescriptions for all of our clients. So we did everything legally. But it was around 2003, 2004. There was a sharp downturn in the stock market, and insurance companies actually make most of their money through investing premiums. So when the market goes down, they start getting desperate of what can we cut. And because we had this unique niche and we were seeing hundreds of pregnant women a week for physical therapy that no one else in the US was, we stuck out. And they looked for a way to take us down. And it turned out there was another rule that if they claimed they thought there was fraud, they wouldn't have to pay us. And our only recourse was to sue them to get the money. And that's how they basically beat us out of 300 grand.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, so it's like, oh, okay. So it's, you know, is it ethical? Is it legal? Is it what? It's like people do what they can get away with. And I think, and that's what makes legislating and so many things so complex and difficult, especially when people are feeling as though that the country is, you know, these two tribes that are fighting each other all the time.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I mean, like I didn't like Reagan, right? Because you know I'm super liberal and all of my beliefs always have been, but you know I would take Reagan or George W. Bush or even you know any of the Bushes or Reagan over Trump at any time. And let me, so separate from my political, let me tell you actually why I'm doing it, because I know that people who are solidly behind Trump would never care about anything that I say.
I
And
think they would
again, it may
listen.
not,
I mean, I'm listening.
maybe, but I'm not right. But you're not going to vote for it. But
Are you on the ballot?
more. Here's the thing. I'm not on the ballot, but anybody can write me in, just like Joe Biden was. And so what I'm saying is anybody really wants anybody, they can, you know, they can. Yes, because I'm registered with the Federal Election Commission. I think that's one of the things we're supposed to have. But basically, and I check with them, they're like, yeah, if 150 million people write you in, you win. And my way of getting there in time, the long way there, is actually through the building of my own mailing list. Because because once you have a mailing list, you don't have to pay again for the next, you know, look at someone like Jill Stein. Every time she runs, she gets 2% of the vote, then pay another X number of millions and another X number of millions. I have the idea that it could, and again, I don't know if anybody wants my message. If they don't want my message, then no sense wasting millions of dollars anyway. But that I probably have as good a chance of starting to see if the message is breaking through. And if it is, then I get people on the mailing list and work it that way without having to actually spend money. I don't know if the money is going to fix the thing that I can't fix just by doing what I'm doing. But my reasoning is this: my feeling about Trump fundamentally is that I guess for me, I think he's a heartless person, and I think you don't want a heartless person as president. I just think it's not a kind of person that you want. Somebody who, when you know all the things that people say about him being psychotic, and you know you read his niece's book where she lays out a million reasons why this is a guy who really does not have the character to be president. So my strategy is, actually, I'm launching my podcast in the next couple of days. What I want to do is I want to search out people who've been injured by Donald Trump and give them the opportunity to tell their human story of what his actions have done to their life. And my hope is that hearing enough of the pain of what he's caused, easy thing, I would like to find one of those welfare moms who his salespeople at Trump University used to sell and like get them to give their welfare money to be trained by Trump University, and the way how aggressive they were, without any compassion for anybody, or the people or the guys who put the windows in at one of the Trump casinos and then never got paid, and how that and what that did to the rest of their life. The feeling that if people thought of it that way, and if I were able, it's just a matter of a handful of independents who can either be skewed one way or the other. So if I knew that I had, been able to change 20 people's minds, then I feel like, well, I did more than if I just sat in my house and complained. So I don't need to have a huge outcome to feel that I've already um, made good use of my time. That's
Don't
a lot of what I'm behind.
Do you think it would be better to run a campaign based on explaining your ideas and your plan versus trying to say that any other candidate is a bad person because of this, this, and this? I mean, for Trump, he's got 2016 to 2019 to say, you say I'm not a president, but this is what I did when I was president. How do you remember the world being in America, the world between 2016 and 2019 versus what it's been the past few years? I think it was better.
Right. And it's what you choose to focus on.
But
you know,
but for your campaign or anybody running a campaign,
Mhm.
why not focus on the issues that if it's the battle of ideas, why is anyone's ideas better than the other? So I don't want to hear
Right.
about
And
how bad any candidate is. I
uh-huh.
mean, if they're criminals, then that's gonna take care of it in the criminal justice system. Although I think
It
the criminal
won't.
justice
We know
system
that
has
won't.
flaws, but let's just say let's not worry about all of that. Let's say you're running for president. Here's what I think about these key issues. And then you leave that up to the electorate to go, oh, well, do I agree with them? Do they make sense? And do I think he's going to be able to implement those ideas, he or she? So
And
what's the idea?
people look, but I disagree. I actually think the character is more important when it comes down to it.
I,
And what I'm going
do
to
you
say
need
is
to
that
like the president?
it's not a
Do
matter
you
of
need to
liking.
like
I'm
him
talking
to do a
character
good job?
isn't about that. Character isn't
Do you
about that.
right? But do you think that the U.S. was in better shape during Trump's presidency or now? Was the world was the U.S.?
I can point to things that were better or worse during that period versus now. I understand what part of it is also looking at the things that are a direct result of what a president did versus things that are global forces that no president would have actually been able to do something to fix. Right? For instance, when gas prices went up, there was really nothing that that Biden could have done to fix that at that time because it was the function of global forces. I mean, he might have been able to change the taxes applied on a particular state, something like that. But the way that things started. First, you have the supply chain issues of the pandemic, and then you have the issues for gas prices relative to the war in Ukraine, and some of these things that were set in motion were going to have negative effects in the U.S. regardless of who the president is. So that's why to just look at it as broadly as it's a great campaign technique because it's simple and people want simple. But if we're actually if you're going to talk intelligently about what is good, what is bad, and then there are the things of if in terms of looking at character and looking at moments during Trump's presidency where wow, if something got a little bit further this way or a little bit further that way, it could have been more problematic. And there are tons of stories. All these people writing books of basically staff stepping in or secretaries stepping in to sort of prevent things that could have been really catastrophic, right? The story of certain people, they would sort of not put papers on his desk. Or there were basically a lot of people around Trump who, while he was president, were kind of keeping him in check.
Or you could
And
also say weren't letting him be the president. Like the idea that there is
right,
an
okay,
entrenched government bureaucracy, I don't think is any secret. Presidents for years have been talking about that, especially on some of the older presidents exits, their last speeches where they said, you got to look out for the military industrial complex. You got to look out for this, this, and that. I take by your answer of saying that, by your long answer to what were things better in 2016 to 2019, that you do think they were better from 2016 to 2019. You just don't want to say it's because Trump was president.
No. I actually, I can see what I can see are characteristics of the two time periods that could make it easy for people to look at 2016 to 2019 and say it's better. Okay. And in terms of things that I focus on, for instance, 2016 to 2019 changed the and I think intensified divisions in the country, because Trump being president made people feel as though they could, that their most horrible impulses were okay. Let me give you an example. Okay, I'll give you this is something never happened to me, like 2017, 2018. I'm going to link it back and I'm going to say this is, how I feel about it in part. So I was talking to a mom. She was potentially interested in hiring me to do SAT tutoring and college coaching for her kid. And not knowing who I am, not knowing anything, within the first 5 minutes of the conversation, she makes it clear that her son, who is just a white kid, doesn't have a chance because, the Jews take all the spots. Now, so here's my point. I know people always felt this way, had felt this way. I know this, all right? But I'm going to say that it was a good thing for society that previously people didn't feel comfortable expressing those kinds of feelings. And if you connect that to the fact that, and part of this does have to do with, with being Jewish, right? And knowing how the world tends to look at Jews, and knowing, something that was interesting for me, I had my nose done when I was 47. So I had a very Jewish nose until I was 47. I remember my early 50s or something, sitting in a restaurant and hearing, and right next to me was a few guys sitting at a table talking about, about a boss, and like, oh, but he's Jewish, and you know how the Jews are. And what surprised me then was I'd never heard people talking like this, and I realized, oh, I get it. People used to see my nose, and they would shut up, right? So what I'm saying is that by validating people's views about a lot of things, including the whole conspiracy thing, let me ask you this question, because since I know you're a Trump supporter, so let me just do one direct question. I'm just curious how you think about this.
Okay.
For me, relative to the idea of any conspiracy theory, you have to figure out, well, how much energy. Well, that's among them. There's many, right? There's that. There's the idea that during the during COVID, that this was all a pharmaceutical company, conspiracy, all these various conspiracies. And I guess what I'm saying is that for conspiracies to be reasonable, then you have to be able to see, well, how many people would have to be involved to make this happen? Is the
Two
outcome
or more
enough
for conspiracy? That's the definition, legal definition.
Yeah, but
2 or more people working in concert.
But let's talk about what's reasonable. It's just what's reasonable, because and people use the same logic in all cases, right? Let's say you think your babysitter stole from you. It's a form of, right? You think your babysitter stole. So then you start figuring out, well, what is the babysitter's money situation? And you start thinking, is it reasonable for her to take that risk? Do you see what I'm saying? So when you take something like the size of the conspiracy, which is part of why Giuliani's out all this money, that the conspiracy is involving all these people, and it's so tight and so good that nobody can find any evidence.
About what? What conspiracy are you talking about?
Well, let's talk about the election conspiracy. The fact that that the election was stolen, which in order for it to have been stolen would basically mean that all of those things that Giuliani said, or at least some of them would have been true. So then again, it's the reasonableness of who are these people who are doing it, and because again, they need somebody. If there's billionaires behind it, they still need a sort of an army of people to actually put that all in motion, which generally would have caused there to be some evidence that never came up. And then you have to believe that, oh, it's all the judges who are in on this. And so, I mean, it gets, like I said, it gets to the point where the size of the conspiracy doesn't even make sense with what they're getting out of it.
For corruption, humans do things that are in their self-interest. Humans lie, they cheat, they steal. So
yes,
we accept that as a truth. And it's a spectrum. You could have good people, or more good, more bad, whatever you want to label it as. So people aren't perfect. Do you think that the election results in any election, I don't care if you're talking about a high school student government election or a country, whatever, do you think there is room to cheat the system? Are there ways to stuff the ballot box, if you will?
And you're saying in the U.S. with they exist
anywhere, but in any election for anything, the Moose Lodge, the American presidency, another country's presidency, voting at a PTA meeting. Is there ways to cheat voting? Yeah, there is.
Right, but if you're doing it on a large scale, then you need to have a lot of people in that conspiracy. Right? Because what I'm saying is that it's like any operation. Like what I'm saying is the size of the operation. If it's a PTA, then probably one or two people could pull that off. Right? If it's that you start getting into a city situation, you start needing a few more. I mean, I'm not saying classic conspiracy was how all of the executives at the tobacco companies, they all had the data that said that the cancer was deadly, and they buried it. But then again, it was all kind of believable because there was all this money, and in the end, we're talking about like a group of like 20 guys sitting in a room doing it. So that's what I'm saying. That's reasonable. Right?
But where are we at on that? Do you think that happened? Do you think the tobacco companies got together to cover up the fact that smoking is bad for your health?
It was all. I believe that this all came out over the years. That all this stuff was found, and that's part of the reason that they won the lawsuits in the end.
Yeah, it may not be evident immediately.
That's true, but I'm saying it's also, relative to the size of the conspiracy, and what would you need to do in order to get that many people to conspire together.
Do you remember in the 80s, the think globally, act locally? It's the same idea with an election or anything. Anytime you wanted to fool the system, is you just have to do a little part somewhere, and everybody does a little part, then that can add up to a lot. Do you think that it's a good idea to have vote by mail, to have ballots sent out, secret ballots, or ballots that don't have your name on them, to have those mailed out to people, and then those can be returned and then counted? Do you think that's a good idea? Should people have to have an ID to vote?
Part of it is, what are the mechanics of the process? And honestly, to answer that question, I would have to look at the mechanics of the process, because my understanding is that whether it's by mail or without the ID you're talking about, that it has not actually resulted in significant election fraud. And then you balance against, you're always balancing this
How would you
against
be able to
how many
detect
people.
significant election fraud if you've removed the mechanism to be able to detect it? If you said you don't have to have an ID to vote, we're going to mail out these ballots and we'll get them back and we'll count them. Well, hold on.
Because
Anybody could fill those
because
out.
but I don't know what the specifics what the specifics in their process are. I don't believe. Here's what I'm going to say. I don't believe it's as loosey goosey as your characterization would suggest. I also don't believe
What did I
it's as
suggest?
perfectly. You suggested that people are the ballots are just going out to people, or ballots are being set out that are relatively easy to be repurposed for somebody who says, okay, I'm going to use this ballot that's been sent out to pack the ballot box for the candidate I want. Right. And
let me give you a specific example, because I think that's what we need. In 2016, I lived in Oregon, Salem, Oregon. And in Oregon, you can only vote by mail. You don't go anywhere. You get the form, you fill it out, you put it in a drop box that looks like a mailbox. It's not a mailbox, but it looks like it. Or you drop it by somewhere, you put it in the mail. In 2016, I personally, in Salem, Oregon, received 4 ballots with my name on it. I returned one. I called them about the others and I said, what do I do with these? Do I return them to you? Do I shred them? Do I destroy them? What's up? And they said, you can bring them back or you can throw them away. So I took pictures of them and then I shredded them, the 3 that I didn't use, because I only voted once, because that's what you do. You vote once. Now I moved to Florida in 2017.
Right.
And in that 2020 election, to my Florida address, I received 2 ballots from Oregon with my name on them, of which I shredded both of them. How easy would it have been? And how could you tell if I had filled out all of those and sent them back? How would you know in your system? How would you know that I voted 4 times in one election and 3 times in another election? How would you know? You would not.
Well, if
but
I
now
was,
you
wait
say
a minute,
there's no way you can tell.
Sure there is. Because if it's, let's say I'm running the system, there's got to be a way so that a particular name and a particular address cannot actually be counted more than once. Now,
it's not on the ballot.
But the question is, it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be, as long as on the other end, as it's being received. I mean, even I do that, like, because people try to trick me, where they'll have maybe gotten a free consultation with me or something, right? And then they try to get it again with like a different with a different
everybody's
name
done
or
that
different
at Bath and Beyond. That's why they went out of business. You just get another thing sent to you.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that I don't get fooled, because first of all, I'm working small enough that I see a name and then I realize, so I'm
how do you know the 4 secret ballots I turned in are all from me? You receive it back, the envelope is removed, and the ballot goes one way.
Right.
They don't keep them together.
I understand that, but so the question is, and again, this would be, there's 2 things. Number one, you have to talk to Oregon and find out, if this happens, what mechanisms are designed to not count all those votes. Are there any mechanisms? And here's what I'm also going to say, that if you're right, that people are doing this all over, and if it's actually making a difference in the election, then when they did, for instance, all those investigations in Georgia and all that stuff, and counting and recounting and everything like that, that someone should have been able to say, hey, look what we found. Here's 4 votes from the same name, same address, same signature. Because don't you sign it
You
when
don't
you
sign
send
a
it back?
ballot. It's a secret ballot. No, there's
Okay.
no, it's separated. They don't keep them together. So there's no way to check on it. That's how it is anywhere. And I think in the news recently, I think it's Denver and somewhere in Arizona, they've had cases come to light where there's been hundreds and thousands of unaccounted for images or missing images of voting. Like when you fill it out in person and then you put it into the machine and it takes a picture of it for some reason, and then you have the ballot and the picture. And when they do the recount, they didn't have the pictures and they
Okay.
didn't have the ballots. So
So
there
I
are
guess
things coming to light. It's just,
right. So
I think the answer is, I don't know. Do you think that there was enough election shenanigans to have made the election go a way it shouldn't go if only citizens voted once?
no.
I don't know. There's no
See,
mechanism
again, it's
in it. There's no
I
mechanism for me to be able to tell you if there has or hasn't. Only, like, if you look at some elections and you say, well, there's 150,000 registered voters, 350,000 people voted. Well, is that shenanigans? Yeah, that is shenanigans. Can we tell? We don't know. We can't tell who voted more. And that happens all the time in third world countries.
right, and I agree it does happen all the time in third world
Then
countries.
why
I guess
couldn't it
what I'm
happen
saying
here?
in terms of the evidence of it is that the scenarios that you're describing should be relatively easy if someone was going to look at it to find some evidence. And
What's
the
easy
fact
about
that
it?
if
Why is it easy? They mail out
because
ballots and then they get them back
right,
in. There's no name on them and they count them.
that assumes that there's no that they've got that these ballots that go out have no tracking mechanism on a ballot by ballot
So
basis
there's a
at all.
conspiracy there's a conspiracy in our government to track private or secret ballots.
It's not a matter of well, first of all, I don't know
Can't be
exactly.
both.
This is where it's unless it's that someone you don't know necessarily who that this matches with that. I don't know what the matching system is the truth. I don't know what the matching system is. I'm going to find out after we finish the
Do you
podcast.
remember when Carter, and I can't remember the other people that were on it, but former President Carter was on it, and they did a research into voting fraud back then. This is 70s time frame maybe, and they came out. The Democrat side came out, and it might have been bipartisan, that said vote by mail is one of the easiest ways to interfere or to falsify votes in an election, and they recommended against voting by mail. And then look at the list of countries that you can't vote by mail because it's easy to mess with. So why make it easy to mess with? I mean, if you were going to mess
that's an
with the
easier
system,
question.
wouldn't
That
you rather have
question, look, okay. The question relative to the whole thing with mail-in voting is what is the benefit from making voting more accessible to poorer people in many cases? I mean, that's what this has generally
I
ended
think
up
that's a
turning
false
into.
argument. It's not more accessible. It's easier to cheat. So why is it a
Well, that's
problem
that's
for a
exactly my
poor
point. But
person
that's my
to get a
point. But
license and to go vote?
here's the thing. I'm going to agree that it could be fundamentally easier to cheat a mail-in ballot.
Okay,
But it's
I agree.
but it's still it's in terms of what do we do? Like it's like everything in life, right? You decide what are the benefits, what are the downsides. And so what I'm suggesting is that if once we see what are the protections and whatever, so what I'm saying is we have to balance how much does it allow more people to participate against how much fraud is actually going to come out of this. And for instance, people do this all the time, right? Where it could be a product or something, you know, and then you figure, okay, how much do I have to worry about people cheating versus how much is this actually going to boost sales? You're always figuring out which is better based on what are the downsides and what are the upsides. So until you actually look very deeply at what are the protection mechanisms and are they adequate, and against, first of all, people, yeah, because you don't, in terms of, it's fine, I'm thinking, protecting yourself against stuff. Do you know that it was a couple of weeks we went without, our internet was down here in Costa Rica, and like nobody could figure it out. And then we figured out what had actually happened. Someone had climbed on, this is a third world thing, had climbed up the poles and stolen the wire that led from the pole to our house because it's supposedly worth something. Right? And what I'm saying is that we're probably not going to install, I didn't say, okay, now I've got to lock up my whole thing, because in the end, and it hasn't happened for 2 years, so I already won. Right? What would the cost be to try to protect something like that? It's like crazy against, okay, yeah, this could happen. So that's why it's really got to be down to the numbers of how many people does this make it accessible to, against how much fraud could we possibly get, and then how much could we reasonably get, because a certain amount of this is, with these ballots, like, okay, well, they're going to find, they're going to have a camp of people who are just filling out ballots all day. It's
Yes.
okay, and then we decide which is more believable and where's the evidence of, because if someone was part of one of these camps, that it seems, I'm saying that the people who would do that kind of thing are generally not swimming in money. And so it would be, so there, somebody who's closer to this than I am would love to find one or two of those people, and pay them to reveal the conspiracy. This is how it's all happening. And that's, I guess, part of what I'm saying with conspiracy theory, that if there were what it would take to actually make a difference doing it like this, then you should be able to, then one of those people are going to break and just reveal it. If it's done that way, that's why you have to figure out what are the protections against the fraud, and how much is the mail-in actually, helping democracy.
I
But
mean,
you
they've
have to
already
look at that at the
done,
numbers.
in the 70s, they did that research into, is mail order voting or vote by mail a great idea? And they determined no, it wasn't a great idea. It was too easy to cheat. There are companies that don't, or countries that don't allow it. I mean, if you were, maybe we're just going in a circle on this. So let's just
I think
end with,
I was like, let's move on. It was
let's
funny once you
finish
got
this
into the
part that
political stuff.
says,
I thought we were talking about creativity, but anyway,
yeah,
I'm
well,
happy
it's
to go where we
creative to
want
learn
to.
how to cheat. The
Okay.
you have to have a system that people believe in. Let's put it that way. So let's have a system to vote in that has the least amount of possibility to be messed with, and allows people to avail themselves of their citizen right to vote. Okay. I think maybe we agree on that.
Yes.
Can you summarize your presidential top 3 jobs for all, scholarship for all, brutal honesty for all? Can you summarize those
Sure.
things?
Yeah. Jobs for all is first of all, to the degree that Americans are educated in, in what money even comes for. And I know that sounds, what do you mean people don't know what money's come for? There are tons of people who have no skill and complain that they're not getting, a higher paid job. So first of all, with the jobs for all, I will hire anybody. Anybody who wants to come, I can show them exactly what to do, and they could probably just, I could give them affiliate marketing techniques, selling my own products that would probably make them more than they can make doing lots of other things. And beyond that, it's, if Americans' minds were trained to understand that the only reason you don't have a job is that, in many cases, is that you have ceded the responsibility for sales to someone else because you're too scared of it. And I believe that's true.
All right. Maybe that point not very clear to me on the presidential scale of jobs for all. To me, that seems like everybody's going to get a job, kind of like the Oprah version. You get a job and you get a job and you get a job. But for a presidential campaign to say, everybody can get a job selling my stuff, I don't know. Maybe not as well thought out, or maybe is not as well explained as I need.
All right, let me explain better.
Dumb it down for me, Tim.
It is that if people understood the concept of what a job is from the point of view of providing a service of a certain value in the marketplace and getting back that value.
Okay.
And so what I'm suggesting is that if people understood that, I mean, and from a presidential standpoint, I think that I would reallocate a lot more money to adult job training, to allow people to move into, I mean, in other words, it takes relatively little money to train someone to do coding, which is a highly sought after job. So there's a lot of ways in which the government is not actually aligned, because it moves, so big and so slow, with what could actually help more people to be, I guess what I'm getting is that people can take more control of their own finances, especially because of globalization, and people don't even see that they have that opportunity. So that's a form of, I'm going to call it financial education, that is maybe broader when I talk about the jobs for all.
So could you simplify that and say technical training is available for people? Make technical training more available.
Yes, technical training and actually entrepreneurship training, because because what's interesting is that, and some people have already been figuring this out, that if Americans are about, I want to be, I want to be independent, I don't want to have to depend on anybody, I want to be able to, right? That to the degree that part of that is figuring out how you turn your skills, your work, or whatever into a service product that other people will pay you for, then that becomes the ultimate independence for Americans. And Americans haven't been taught to think that way, right? People are thinking, give me a job, give me a job. So if we simplify my platform into renewed self-reliance for Americans.
I like that. Okay. Self-reliance, space to be able to get a job doesn't mean the government has to hire you, but there needs to be space for you able to either start your own business or learn a trade that you don't have to be on the government dole. I like that.
Okay.
So maybe
we've just expanded into the very many ways. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know if you call it dumb it down, simplify it, whatever. That first point, jobs for all, need a little work on that. What's this scholarship for all mean?
Well, the scholarships for all is that, again, this is something that drives me crazy with what I do. First of all, not everybody needs college. And I think that needs to be, for a president to just come out and say that it's not necessary for everybody. And
Agreed.
the thing about, and the reason I bring up this, here's where I come up with the scholarships for all thing. Because if you can get a 1530 or better on the SAT, that almost universally will give you a full ride scholarship at a decent school. It might be a state school. It's not going to be an Ivy League school. All right. Now, what does it take to get a 1530 on the SAT? I have a 54-point system. If you follow the system and actually do it, what I basically developed, and why I'm like, well, gosh, this is so easy. Do you know what I mean by hunt and peck typing?
Mm-hmm.
Right, where you don't actually know where your fingers are sitting, and you just, right?
Yep.
And let's say you practice it a lot. You're never going to get as fast as the person who actually has the system.
But you can get pretty
Okay.
good.
You get pretty good, but you'll never get great. You'll
Yeah,
never
you're not
get
going to be a speed typer.
fantastic. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. Fundamentally, what I did with the SAT is I created a system that nobody else had. I reverse engineered the test and figured out if you just do these very specific things, you generally have to, most kids are going to have to practice 30 minutes a day for a year. But at the end, but the thing that I keep telling parents about this all along is I said, when I think kids, get a pretty good SAT score, the least I've ever seen somebody get in scholarship is 40 grand. Sometimes as much as 200 grand effectively. And given that I know it pretty much takes 150 hours with my system to get good at it, if you divide that out, your kid is essentially earning $267 an hour to fund their own college education just by sitting and studying SAT. And it gets back to the whole thing of self-reliance and all that. Anybody who does what I just said will get that result, and such a small percentage of people will ever do it. So, and what I'm saying is that if your kid's not willing to put in the work to do that, then you probably shouldn't. Then why pay for their college? Because I do want to put I mean, to me, that's a matter of taking responsibility. And don't get me started on parenting in this country.
All right. You said a lot of words. I'm not sure I understand any clearer what scholarship for all means, but I do
Okay.
agree on the point where, to go with the first one of technical training, you might not need to go to a 4-year college. You might just need to get a technical certificate or something like that. I have a certificate in diesel engineering, which is a fancy way of saying I'm a diesel mechanic. So that paid me a lot more than paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to go get a degree for something that I wouldn't use. Now, I don't have any student loan debt because I paid as I went. And I never took the SAT because I took the ASVAB and I went to the military. But I understand the idea of people need to see different career pathways. So I think a lot of people now think that college is the only answer. And it doesn't mean it's bad to go to college. It just means it might not pencil out. If you're going to get a degree in pottery and you're never going to make pottery or do anything in the pottery business, then why did you get the degree in pottery? So find something that's going to make the money back. Don't go into debt doing it, and prepare for it. That sounds good. Those sounds like all solid ideas. Scholarship for all, that makes me think that you're going to pay for everyone to go to college. And I don't think
All
that's
right.
what it
Well,
means
then
to you.
what I act. Okay, so I agree. I need some fine tuning on my on the wording of my platform. So thank you for that. But let me just I guess say it this way.
Okay.
If college is where for either what you want to do or for whatever reason, if college is where you want to go, and again, if you want to go to one of the Ivy League schools, which doesn't really offer scholarship except for financial aid, well, that's very nice, but that's kind of like you know what I'm saying? It's like if everybody deserves a car, like you don't all get Rolls Royces, it's like,
Yeah.
something smaller will do. So the point is that if you want to go to college, there's really no reason why you shouldn't work hard enough to get the scholarship. Is what I'm saying.
Okay.
That it's like that. It's like if I can lay out for you, do these things, and you get your college paid for, and if the only thing it requires is discipline and time sitting in your house, and you don't do that, then like that's on you. Or maybe when you go through and you see what that is, you're like, if you're not willing to do this, then maybe you shouldn't go to college, or maybe you should go to a cheaper college, or it's like that. It's kind of getting at the whole heart of this whole college thing, college debt, and to the degree that it reflects how financially successful someone's going to be later on, because those are the choices you make. Do I start a business? Do I learn a skill? Do I do I go to college? And so it's a matter of reversing this idea, like, yeah, I've got, I'm a parent, I've got to save up $250,000, so, or whatever, now it's three, whatever the number is, it gets bigger and bigger, so my kid can go to college and have a good life.
Yeah. Go to college,
And
learn
that's
how to
messed
hate
up.
America. Yeah. That seems like what college is these days. But I mean,
I feel like I'm getting baited here. I'm getting baited.
oh no,
But I'm not.
it's hard to deny that. I think because you have people that when you go to college, you want to learn new ideas. So you're like a little sponge out there. And then it depends on what kind of college you go to and who's teaching as to what you learn. So I like the idea of your first thing, jobs for all, something meaning opportunity, that there's opportunity there. So I like that. And then the other would be scholarship for all is have a plan. Think about it. Don't just decide I'm going to go on this track because that's the way I'm heading and that's the way it seems like society wants me to do. You got to think. So what's your plan? What's your plan for moving out of the house? Or is it build a basement and live in that with your parents forever and complain about not having any money and not being able to afford a house because whatever happened and the dollar took a downturn and now a dollar doesn't go as far, inflation and all that, whatever, different conversation. So let's just leave it at have a plan. Scholarship for all means have a plan, use your head. The Marines have that, the honor, courage, and commitment is their thing. And what a great branding that was. Like,
I agree.
And as being in the Marines, I'm not in there now, as having gone in just before 2000 and gotten out just before 2010, that I really feel like I understand what honor, courage, and commitment is, and that the Marines taught me a lot of it. Now, I learned a lot of that before I went into the Marines, but the practical application of it and being able to look back on it, while maybe I didn't understand it then, being able to look back on it and go, oh, okay. I think that's the difference between street smarts and book smarts. Or I would also say the difference between intelligence and wisdom, that wisdom's a good thing to have. Intelligence good to have too. But if you had to give me more than one than the other, I'll take the wisdom, because that's probably going to teach me not to pay or not to go into debt to get a degree I'm never going to use or not going to be able to use to pay it back, and then depend on other people that didn't go to college or that did go to college and paid off their debt or didn't go into debt doing it to then pay my debt because I didn't have a plan. So have an opportunity, have a plan. What's the brutal honesty part about?
The brutal honesty is, my willingness in many ways, coupled with the fact that I can't be sued, to, to say things that are true. And yet it's interesting. A lot of people won't say all the true things because it's dangerous. Separate
About other
dangerous
candidates?
about anybody, really. Because
Well, if it's true, how can you get sued? Like, look at
are you naive?
Look at the real Anthony Fauci, the Kennedy book about that. I mean, if that stuff was fake, and Joe Rogan says it all the time, and I agree, I read the book, I would have, if I was printing the book, as a side note, I would have got a different margin and a different font because it's difficult to read. It's like reading The King in Yellow, which is printed ridiculously with almost zero margin and really small print. But if all that stuff wasn't true, how would he not get sued? Certainly you can sue people for almost anything, even if it is true. So if it is true, if it's not true, how's he not getting sued? That's a good question.
Well, first of all, people, even if they have the right to sue, even if they could sue, they won't necessarily. So I'll tell you that it's fine. There's another reason. There's a more specific business reason, and something I realized with running for president and with the brutal honesty and how it actually helps me just as an entrepreneur. All right. I had mentioned that I came up with this system that's, you know, that basically nobody else has any system, right? The way SAT tutoring works and has grown into this multi-billion-dollar business, it's based on parents being desperate about getting the kids the SAT scores so that they get into good school and all that, not understanding the SAT at all, and having this, tons of people making crazy money selling SAT tutoring services. And, I tend to see things differently. Maybe here's we come to creativity, that what the SAT industry does, and the more I found out about this, and these are the kinds of things that could get me sued when I tell you this, and it's nice not to have to worry about it. Um, Fundamentally, the reason the SAT is so difficult, and this is the part that if you don't start with the truth, you're solving the wrong problem. The SAT was developed as a screening device test because there's tons of kids who get straight A's. There's 25,000 valedictorians, one for every high school in the country. If you're Harvard and you're going to get 40,000 applications from all these mostly straight A students, and you've got to narrow it down to 2,000, that's a business problem. How do you do it in any way that makes any kind of sense? So, when the SAT developed this test, which, because it's so tricky, even though it only tests the basic information, and it's very different from what other countries do, like the UK. In the UK, there's a lot to learn, but if you just straightforward learn all that stuff, you're going to get a great grade. You can go to the top school. It's just most kids aren't going to learn all this stuff. But you could be a valedictorian in the US, have gotten perfect grades, and if you get tricked and don't do well on this SAT, you've lost all your opportunities. Because it's just such an easy thing for them to do. There's only 2,000 to 3,000 kids that'll get a 1550 or better out of 1600. Near impossible to get this perfect score. And the reason is because every kind of question has a very particular kind of trick. But if you actually knew what those tricks were and anticipated them and practiced enough to get good at knowing that, it's kind of, and that's why I money back guarantee a near perfect SAT score. But I say you can't get your money back unless you do all those things. You have to learn all those words. You have to learn the rules. You have to put in the 30 tests. You have to log all that in. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like you in the Marines. I'm sure there is a regimen that if you go through all these physical things, you're going to come out with a certain result, right? If you did all that stuff, you would know. Now, maybe hard to do all those things, but if you do it. So what I really did was I simplified the whole thing down to this set of rules. 54 rules for the whole test. And that's it. And years ago, I had the opportunity to meet John Katzman, who is the founder of the Princeton Review. And the guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And we happen to be it's about exactly the same age. And at the time, I was offering unlimited lessons for a set price. And I wound up running into someone that worked in his office who said, he can't understand how you could possibly be profitable with your model. And I sit down with the guy. This is about 10 years ago. And I said, well, I can do it because I have a system. And if I teach you the system and you learn the system, then you get the score. You have no system. You're just doing generalized review. You're using diagnostic tests that don't even, it doesn't address the problem, because you got an answer wrong in algebra. You didn't lose it because you didn't know algebra. You missed it because there were specific ways that the SAT asks algebra problems. If you knew that, which are included in my rules, then you could win. So when I tell the guy, I said, I've got this one rule that if you just do this one thing, you will get a perfect reading score on the SAT, ACT, LSAT, every test. They all work like this. And he goes, what's the rule? And the rule is that every word of the right answer has to match something in the text you can point to that means the same thing. And he said, Harvey, I just don't believe that. He said, I've been doing this for 35 years, made hundreds of millions of dollars. It can't be that simple. And I sat there with the founder of the Princeton Review, and he flipped through the College Board book of SAT tests for an hour, question after question after question after question, until he realized it works 100%. And he looks up at me and he says, well, Harvey, I guess I could say our systems are cousins of one another, but to be honest, I would be your very stupid cousin. And I'd like to create an army of Harveys, which I took, as an offer to talk about doing some kind of joint business. And I turned him down at the time. for a number of reasons. And then over the years, I thought, maybe since my system is so good, maybe we could collaborate and offer it to poor kids. He ghosts me. Then I took that story and I put it on a YouTube video a little over a year ago. It was up for 8 months. Then maybe enough people saw it. He got back to him. I get a cease and desist letter from his lawyer claiming that I'm lying, that he never said that. And then I find out he's charging $1,000 an hour for whatever he's doing. And for $399, I will give you the whole system, money back guarantee, to get you to the 1530. You see, it's problematic. Except, so I baited him. I hired a lawyer just so he would think I was in New York. And I basically got to a point, the end result of that, after I humiliated his lawyer, was the last line of the last email he sent to me was, "I didn't do anything to you to deserve this, and neither did my lawyer." And I had all that power because he knows he can't sue me, and I get to tell the truth. And because I did that, it's funny, now you're going to hear about conspiracy theories. Because I've been pretty vocal about the industry, I got a woman who has been working in one of the major companies. I won't name it here because I don't want to get you in trouble. I'll do it separately. Billion-dollar company, 150 offices across the US. She was one of the center leaders, and she admits that the diagnostic tests are purposely fraudulent. The test they give you when you come in is made to make your kids score like 1100, so they'll look real bad, so they can sell their $15,000 tutoring package. And even if you get 13 or 1400, they lie and say it's 1100 to sell it to you. They make every kid go through the complete curriculum. I mean, it's just like it goes on and on and on. It's just like lie after lie and scam after scam. So being able, you see, and the point is that, and I know this all started when you said, "Will people sue you?" I took out a little ad because I got so angry about this guy who doesn't have that much experience. His mother started the business years ago. He was charging up to $1.5 million for, what I'll do unlimited for like $4,000, like the complete thing with no guarantee. And I just took an ad out that said College Wizard is more affordable than this guy. Within 2 hours, I get it's a cease, desist, and pay letter that if I don't give him $150,000 for trademark infringement by Friday, he's going to sue me for millions. And then I find out that this guy has gone after all these little tutoring companies, like this is his MO. So now I'm actually going to be able to take this guy down to the extent that he lies, he cheats, he's stealing, and he's on Newsmax all the time as an expert. So the ability to say things as I see them without worrying about being sued is actually proved valuable and let me do things that no one else has ever done. And probably because of fear, part because I would never be doing this stuff, I mean, now it's kind of a joke. It scares my wife. I'm trying to see how many tutoring companies I can get to sue. And then you want to know, here's a strange thing about how the US works and all these things. The reason I found out about this guy charging 1.5 million is because he was on the front of the New York Post, kind of as being a bad thing. Look at this guy charging 1.5 million for college coaching. And after I started this skirmish with him, I basically contacted the woman in the New York Post who had written that story. And she was interested, but then she basically came back to me and told me that the Post would only run the story once he actually sued me, once someone actually has to sue you, and then it's newsworthy. So anyway, the point is that you have to work with the world the way it is, and it doesn't matter whether it's politics or business or, in any particular small town, that that things maybe don't work the way they do, and you can't always tell the truth, or else somebody's going to come back and get you. So, like
Yeah,
I said, there's a
people are
lot of
corrupt.
ways.
They look for the
Yeah,
grift. So
yeah.
what I get from all that is don't take the SAT, learn how to weld.
I don't. But wait a minute. But if you are the kind of kid, if you're the kind of kid who is already getting A's in school, and anybody who's getting A's in school can do this, and there's thousands of them, and it really comes down to the vast majority of kids would just not have the discipline to do it. Even for, I get this money back guarantee for people who sign up to work with me. And I tell them up front, it's not an unlimited, nobody's giving you any kind of money guarantee saying, I don't care where you start from, because they will give you 200 points. I said, wherever you start from, if you go through this program, you're going to get your 1530 plus. But you only get the money
Yeah.
back if your kid does everything I told you at the beginning. And everybody says, yes, I will. And pretty much every kid invalidates the guarantee by week 2. Because I said, hey, you're paying me all this money, and if I'm taking the risk of giving you the money back, your kid has to actually do it. So what I'm saying is I've got this login place on my portal. And your kid needs to log in the practice every day, and they have to practice something every day and log it in, because if you didn't log it in, how are you going to prove it later? Not that hard. It takes you about 10 seconds to log it in. By the end of the second week, nobody's logging anything in. So, right? So, and then
Voids
we
the
might talk
warranty.
about, sorry?
Voids the warranty.
Yeah. And then sometimes I'll even tell parents that up front. I'm like, because this is the real game. Meanwhile, everybody else is much more sneaky. I mean, my guarantee is about 2 sentences. Theirs go on for pages, because they're coming up with every possibility to make sure nobody gets their money back. I'm like, you probably won't get, because if your kid actually did these things, it's pretty much impossible not to succeed. And that I'm happy to give you your money back if your kid does all it. It never happens, right? Because if kids do even 80%, they'll get the result. So I'm just honestly saying that. Go ahead.
I have no doubt it's a good system. And if people are into taking tests or have to take tests, it's a good idea to research different test taking programs so they can find the best one. As far
I'll
as
take
for
that
a
as a
presidential,
recommendation.
yeah. As far as for a presidential election or a presidential platform, I'm not sure where it fits in, but I think your platform should be opportunity, planning, honesty. Now, I don't know if
All
you want
right.
to change honesty to truth, but make it something catchy, and then
Yeah, something
be able to
catchy like
back all
Truth
those
Central,
things up.
like Truth Social. I got it.
Like maybe you could be on Truth Social and send out some truths about it. Like it needs to start with, look, I joined Truth Social because I wanted to get the truth out, and then bam, you're out with your
Hey,
message.
I might use that one, because I do have a Truth
Yeah.
Social account. I do have a Truth
Oh,
Social
okay.
account.
Yeah, use
Yeah,
it.
I want to get the
So
truth out. Yeah.
we talked a lot about a lot of different things. Let's
We did.
kind of wind things up with a little overview or short discussion about
Okay.
creativity and what your view of
Oh,
it is.
great. Okay.
So, creativity. Do you think that creativity is something that we manifest ourselves out of our experience with the world, or is it also something that is outside of us that we work as like an antenna or a conduit for? As the Romans would say, and I say this a lot, people are probably bored of it, all these tens of peoples that are watching all of every podcast, that the Romans, when they talked about genius, they talked about it different than we talk about it. I think they said, when they looked at something, a piece of art, a piece of work, something, they would go, that's genius. That's not saying the person that did it was genius. That's saying that something worked through that person, that the genius worked through that person to create that. What's your idea or thoughts on creativity and how we are able to be creative?
Interestingly, I mean, I felt at times as though, a muse had had connected with me. But in reality, what I think is that creativity is developed by basically being willing to, it's a combination of being willing to be open and actually training your imagination, spending time with your imagination. I mean, almost so many, we're just saying, well, you know, after a while, you develop, you develop an, I mean, I certainly have an internal process that's far more developed than it was when I was younger, in terms of solving any problem creatively, in terms of, you know, being able to whittle down to what are the possible solutions, then what are the likely solutions, all of those kinds of things, or even just being able to imagine, okay, well, here's the problem, but if we could do this, and that would solve that problem. And you sort of, it starts, you know, becoming a chess game where you start seeing it that way. And a lot of it is, like anything else, being willing to spend the time to foster it. You know, something that one of the most, and it was just followed up by something I read today, last week. One of the most inspiring things I ever read for my own creativity was when I read about Allen Ginsberg, who was a famous beat poet, talking about how he basically throws out 90% of what he writes. See, that changes what everybody thinks about creativity. Most people, they think it just comes. And so that, and then I was reading, it was an Instagram post, which same idea, that Picasso supposedly turned out 50,000 paintings, works of art in his lifetime, but only 100 are actually like known about, you know, that are like considered good and known. So that means it's 1% of his 1% of his creative product that everybody loves.
It's like Beatles songs. The Beatles have a lot of songs, and a lot of them are crap.
Well, I don't know that, but here's my Beatles story. Here's my Beatles story, which is, again, it all keeps working to this stuff. You know, you talked about, I thought you brought up the 10,000 hour thing at some point. You know, the Malcolm Gladwell idea that anybody who spends 10,000 hours on anything will become world class. And then they find out, oh, it's interesting that Bill Gates had this unique opportunity to mess around on an unlimited basis with a mainframe computer, you know, when nobody even knew about computers, and which basically gave him the training that made him able to then, you know, do the thing they do. And then they found out, oh, Mozart actually is, you know, his dad was making him practice from the time he was 3. Not everybody who practices when they're 3 is going to get that, but it just becomes easier when, you know, you put in the time. And so that's what, so part of it is wanting it, you know, wanting to have that experience of what it feels like to come up with something, to create something, to feel that was cool. Another is the confidence to believe that you can. But the biggest thing relative to what I'm saying is the persistence to stick with it long enough to get good. And I'm going to call this my practice miracle, because I taught myself piano when I was, I guess, about 12 years old. And I've never considered myself a piano player. I always played the piano to accompany my singing that I was more comfortable with. And, you know, I've had the chance, I performed, I played piano for Vice President Mondale in 1976.
Okay, Walter.
Because I happened to be in the Dartmouth Arts Center on a Friday night playing piano, and because Dartmouth is in New Hampshire and all the candidates always start there, that they're frequently campaign events, and Mondale was coming because he was running for president. He was coming the next day, and so, you know, they said, could you play like an introduction when Mondale arrives? So it was, you know, I had to go, that's all secret source, just because, you know, I was in the right place. But I've had a lot of these cool, you know, musical experiences, but through all of it, I just never felt, I was always embarrassed about my piano playing. And I've been playing a lot more in the last couple of years, because I actually built a theater in my backyard. That was another benefit of being in Costa Rica. The quarter acre of land I bought for privacy. And then for 25 grand, I have this little outdoor theater so I can just perform whenever I feel like it. And it made me practice more. It was about a month ago. I still don't know exactly what the heck my fingers started doing, but I started playing great.
Hmm.
I can define what I think. I wasn't even aiming for it. What I guess the way to describe it is I figured out a way to play piano like guitar. That
With the strings.
just
Yeah.
But the idea is that when you play guitar, if you're singing to it, you're either it's your strum rhythm or it's the arpeggio rhythm that, if it's done right, makes it sound good. And I somehow did something, and I don't even know what I'm doing. My fingers just, like, if I know the chord, my fingers just do it. So it's a combination between what I'm hearing and this, and it was like, oh, only 50 years of practice. Look at
Hmm.
that. So and what's cool is I've actually integrated. We're going to see how it goes, because I have a 90-minute show booked at the 5-star Crocs Hotel nightclub, The Loft, on Memorial Day, May 26th, which is, it's basically a combination stand-up comedy piano concert show.
Okay.
And part of it's just pure marketing, because everybody loves my music. Some people find my jokes a bit extreme. So I'm looking at it like, it's like that really rich, dark chocolate. You can't take too much of it, but you get something. And we're gonna see how that goes. And I call it my Papi Azúcar sweet and sour show, because that's my alternate identity.
Sugar
Papi
daddy.
Azúcar. Yeah,
Hmm.
Papi Azúcar. And my theater is Lugar de Papi Azúcar, Sugar Daddy's place. Yeah. And see, it's Sugar Daddy sweet and sour. It's pretty cool. The sweet is the music, and the sour is the dark comedy. So yeah, see, that's my life. It just, creativity kind of, moves together. And I was like, oh, because I was given 90 minutes, right? They want to do a 90-minute show. And I said, well, in the past, to do 90 minutes, I have to hire other comedians, and then that's a
Yeah.
hassle,
Opener.
and then I got to pay them. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to have a standalone 90-minute show, right? And if it does well next month, and it's all going to be taped, and I can do them all over. And
Are you going to do your own introduction? Like, are you going to wear a certain thing and be your own opener, and then explain who's coming out and what they're going to do, and then it's
no. I
you?
just it's basically, no. I'm kind of, again, even brutal honesty there, because I'm just coming out of my usual Pompey Azúcar, uh, black polo shirt, black sweatpants, and gray sandals. That's as I mentioned. I have my uniform.
Hmm.
Introduce
That sounds
myself
like my
as,
uniform.
but it's cool. I actually had to go on stage in it. And I walk around all the time like that. But I'm gonna go on, and I'm basically breaking it up, where I'll do like 6 to 7 minutes of comedy, 2 songs, then another 6 to 7 minutes of comedy, and also tell the audience that I have no idea how this is gonna go, because if if we're all laughing together and we're enjoying the comedy more, maybe that'll go a little longer. And if you seem to be less interested, if you don't find the comedy as funny as I do, then I'll just, you know, I'll yield and just make you feel good with some music. So who
Yeah,
knows? I've never seen somebody do something quite like this before, and that's what makes it exciting.
I can think about some ways to have set that up, where you give them an itinerary, and at the end it has the piano, and you have a bunch of things before that. You come out 90 minutes on the clock, you do 2 bad jokes, you say, well, 89 minutes left. As you can see, the last part of the show is piano, and then the piano rolls out and you start playing.
I don't know. Well, the main thing I'm going to tell people is, from the beginning, is, I want us all to have a good time. one of the things also that's going to allow me to do is I do a lot of crowd work. Um, it's easy for me to just start conversations with people, and I also like to fuck with people. Um, here's an easy way. I see a couple, and I say, how are you doing, whatever. I said, all right, we're gonna play a little game, okay? You're gonna both close your eyes, and then you're going to raise your hand with between 1 and 5 fingers, and you're going to rate your current sex life between 1 and 5. Eyes closed, go. I don't even know if people will do it or not, but it's a fun premise.
And then when people don't close their eyes, you go, okay, put your hands down, put your hands down.
No,
I realized that was going to be that much trouble.
no, it's just fun for me because part of the brutal honesty is that I'm pretty much comfortable with asking people just about anything, and I'm usually, this is the danger, I'm usually very good at reading people, meaning knowing who to fuck with and how to fuck with and who not to fuck with. Um, so who knows? But then we figure, since it's being taped, if I do get beat up,
there'll be evidence.
Well, that'll be some viral content.
You just need the 3 C's for a successful one-man 90-minute show, and that is crowd work, cocaine, and middle C.
Oh, I like that. Well, usually whenever I'm doing anything creative, whether or not my wife is nearby, my girlfriend is always by my side. My girlfriend Mary, and her last name is Juana, and whether you want to spell it Juana or Wanna is whether my girlfriend makes me a pothead or someone who runs around with fast women. It's up to you, whatever you want to call it. But I do appreciate the fact that you can smoke any weed you want in your house in Costa Rica. It depends who you are, maybe, but I find the level to which THC enhances my creativity is remarkable. And I don't think cocaine does it in the same way for creative product, because that's supposedly why there's a period of time where all of the TV shows were crappy because everybody wrote them on cocaine. But the weird thing about me with weed is, I've taped my performances when high versus not high. I see my jokes after the fact, or I'll ask my wife, "Is that funny?" Because I'm high, so I don't know. And for whatever reason, I found it a huge creativity boost. It may not be for everybody. Follow your local legal regulations. Yeah, follow those regulations.
Yeah. So 2 good things about Costa Rica, then. You're close to the airport and you can smoke in your house. I mean, it's pretty good. You should get on the tourism board there when the power's on.
Well, actually, the fun part of my theater, that's one of the deals that I advertise as 420 friendly, because you'll appreciate this. See, I'm not going to turn down corruption when it comes my way. And wait, I'm going to tell you this story, and there's really nothing I did wrong, and yet I was a huge benefactor. No, I was a huge. I received a lot of benefit from corruption. So here's what happened. I built this theater in my backyard, and some friends are saying, there's local restaurants, and even though you're doing it all for free, they may look at you as competition. They may be threatened. And I'm friends with the mayor, and maybe I'll have the mayor come to your show, and if the mayor likes you, then that gives you a little bit of protection in case somebody's bothering you. So, okay. So the mayor comes. He doesn't speak a word of English, but he liked the show, and he gives me his business card with his, with his first name and his cell phone on it, and he says, "Call me." I go meet him in his office, and basically he wanted to know if I would be willing to let him use this theater thing, with this parking and everything, for political events. And so I go, "Sure." And then he's like, "And why don't you come to my to my house next week. There's some kind of city celebration. We're having a barbecue. So I swear, I figure I'm going to some barbecue with like church leaders and, local business people and the machas of a government. You know what? I get to it. We get there. It's 10 people. My wife and me, 5 mayors and 3 congressmen. And I'm there drinking whiskey with all these mayors, and like, what is like, oh, you want to be a congressman? Because basically they had the whole thing like, right, worked out, and we spend the
They're
whole
looking for
day.
Papa Zucar.
No, and we spend the whole day and the whole night, and we go. He has to give a talk at some dance place, and then like the whole table's bill gets paid by some mystery person because it was the mayor's table. It's okay. I'd have to pay money for that. And the one interesting thing is that where I live, my house is very lovely. The road in front of my house was a little bit messed up, but okay. But there's sort of like 2 sides to the road, and the other side that's a little bit above, and the other side of our little street completely cracked up. And the neighbors have been writing letters and trying to get it fixed for 8 years. So after my soiree with the mayor, it's like 8 o'clock in the morning next week, and I hear out my window, "Poppy, hey Poppy." I'm like, who is that? I go out on the balcony. There's the mayor with a hard hat on, 3 machas from the city hall. He's just showing me how they've completely resurfaced the above road, and how mine will, and just to let me know that my road will be completely resurfaced by 4 p.m. No return favor has been asked for yet. He actually lost the election, so I don't know where but it was just curious and funny. And then the neighbors got all excited because they thought their letter campaign had finally worked.
Just let
now
them
they're, yeah. But now they're having meetings on how they can get speed bumps added.
Those are communists.
Like, we got the road, now we just. So anyway, you never know what you're gonna get if you just taking risks. Yeah, but again, it's you always assess. What is the worst that could happen, and am I willing to live with that? And is the benefit sufficiently great to justify the risk? That is where people screw up. Right?
That's good.
They haven't actually figured that part out, and that's important.
It's a good title for your show too. Your next 90-minute show is "I've Benefited from Corruption." Or the benefit of corruption.
I like that. I'm a corruption. I've been.
You could even have like a 30-minute segment in your show that's dedicated to corruption, in which time, things happen in the theater. You get a new piano because of somebody owed you a favor, or some other situation. You have some people removed because you didn't like the way they looked. Just corruption. Things you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, corruption can be fun.
It goes too far, and then you get speed bumps. That's the punchline.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
If corruption gets too far, you get speed bumps.
That's how you know. That's why you look at California, and there's speed bumps before and after parking places in the rest area, and you're like, "What? Who's paying for this? This
Too
overdone
many speed
nannyism?"
bumps.
Yeah. You don't need speed bumps. You just need the Bolsheviks. They're the speed bumps. That's the communist. That's the communist joke there.
Yeah,
I thought you liked the dark humor.
You gotta be careful. Actually, that's my last joke, because when I was in Prague, there was a synagogue, and on the synagogue, I was so surprised. My actual last name that I was born with is Weil, which is pronounced Weil in German. It actually means just because. And anyway, I was in, and I know that my ancestry is from both Russia and Austria, and that area, and Prague is nearby, and I'm in the synagogue, and look, and on the wall, I find 5 of my relatives with the name Weil. And I was so
That's wild.
Yeah, I was so proud. And, and more than anything, their names being on that wall is a testament to their remarkable success. And by there, I mean the Nazis. Yeah. And yeah, there's 80,000. There's 80,000 on that wall, and 5 are my relatives. And but it just motivates me to say to the Nazis, "You missed me," and yeah, that's about it.
How can people follow your work and learn more about you online?
If you just Google Harvey Wizard, there's a page made. Just go to harveywizard.com. Oh, I've got so many goodies. So many goodies. First, my book, 65-Year-Old Badass, 21 Unconventional Secrets for a Life of Wealth, Health, and Adventure, where I just spill the beans on everything. I talk about my felonies. I talk about the millions that I've made. I talk about my love life and my 4 marriages and the secrets for everything that's bringing me happiness these days, and how to start a business, all kinds of things. And if you just go to harveywizard.com, I'll just give it to you for free. I mean, you can buy it on Amazon, but why do that? I'll give you the book for free. And here is part of my presidential campaign. Why wait for me to be president to change your life for the better? I will, because I am a life strategy coach. You didn't see that coming, did you? And I will give anyone a 30-minute consultation, free consultation, assuming, you got to fill a little form. And if you're a moron, then no. But if you're a serious person and you're like, do you have a way for me to live a healthier, wealthier, happier life? Could you come up with a game plan that would help me achieve the goals that I've been trying to achieve that I haven't been able to achieve on my end? I'll do that. And in fact, if I think we're a good fit, I will work with you for 30 days for free. Take that, Tony Robbins, who won't do that. And because I'm looking for people to form long-term relationships with. I've got a few where, I'll just take a piece of all the money I build for you. Better than Shark Tank. HarveyWizard.com. Look for Harvey Wizard. Who knows what magic we can do together?
I have that in that website is in the show notes, so people can go there and click directly on it if they'd like. I've got some other links too for your comedy and some YouTube videos and your Instagram.
Oh my God.
So I like your website. Website looks good. It's a good signature at the bottom. That's good. So
photo logo. Yeah. I'll give them a plug. That's a photo logo signature at the bottom.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Sharp edges.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Not a bad name for a comedy show either. Sharp edges. Maybe that's already been done. Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts on everything. Best of luck in your development of the political future and with all your future successes. Hope this relationship carries you to the end of where you need to go.
Wherever that may be. Who knows? I might not be here tomorrow. Fuck it, we're all going to die. But anyway, but live your best life. That's what it's really about. Because if you were going to die tomorrow, you'd live a better day today. Think about it.
Or you'd just be more terrified. One of the two.
That's true. It's fascinating.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for your time. I'll talk to you on the other side of this searing drum exit. All right.
All right.